Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Had an eventful day here. Lots been happening here in my city, my city of residence, New York City. So we'll talk all about that. I'll tell you what happened, what I saw. I'll show you some video that I got. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. The way we do things, for those of you who may not be familiar with the way we do these live streams, I give my opening remarks, which is about whatever I want to talk about for the night. Then from there, I do a roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. We find out who it is that's on the other side of the camera. And then from there, I answer your questions for the rest of the night. So if there's something that you would like me to talk about in the second half of our program, all that you need to do is send me a super chat or a Rumble rant, and I will make a point of doing my best to answer the question in the second half of the show. It'll be a lot of fun. So that's going on. At this point, I am thinking ahead to our National Educational Workshop this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday morning in Vermont. That's where my mind is at. It's pretty late, but if you still want to come, link is down below. There's room for people still, but it's pretty late in the game. We're pretty set in how we're doing things. So we got that. I did finally get a copy of this textbook that we published. Wow. It's a big book. 532 pages long, and they are big pages. And I'm very happy that we'll be able to start using this for our educational workshops. Lots of pictures, and I'll talk about that more later in the show. That's not what we're starting out with tonight, but and it's right now it's available. So wanted to mention that. But hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. If you got something for the second half of the show, send me a super chat. The big news item for today. I went to Columbia University. So it's been 5 days now. This is day number 5 of a campus occupation. Some of the pro-Palestine students at Columbia University have set up a tent encampment in the center of the campus, on the commons. They set it up, and that was 5 days ago. Yesterday, they locked down the campus. The NYPD was called in. They shut the gates, and they locked the campus down. And then today at noon, every politician you ever heard of in New York City came out to have a press conference at the university to talk about how offended they are by these protests taking place. And I stood there, and I, as a member of the press with a press credential, I stood there with all the other reporters, and I listened to the press conference. And these politicians, they made it sound like they were making it against the rules to be Jewish at Columbia University. They were talking about freedom of religion and how the freedom of students who are Jewish to practice their faith was being threatened, and students were afraid. You would have thought that they were having some kind of like campus pogrom. right? They actually made it sound like the issue here is that these Jewish students were being discriminated against, and hate was being hurled at them, etc. I listened to this press conference, and I'm thinking, like, okay, like, seriously, like, there's no way that this is what's going on. And so then after the press conference, there was a demonstration outside of the campus. And then at 1 o'clock, there was a walkout at the campus where all the professors, like thousands of people, walked out of their classes. I couldn't go in and see the walkout. I saw it from a distance through the gate because the campus was completely shut down. But the protest outside, it was several hundred people, and it went on for a long time. It was still going strong. I left around 5 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, the walkout happened, and it was a long protest. So I'm going to show you some of what I filmed today. I'm going to stop the video and comment on it as I go. I'll also show you my reporting that I did. The live broadcast I did. I'm just going to show you what it was like at Columbia University. So here we go. So we're here outside of Columbia University, where the students are planning a walkout at 1 p.m. to protest against Israel. One thing that I thought is worth noting is the gates of the campus. I don't know if you can see there, but the gates of the campus have been decorated with balloons that are white and blue, the colors of the Israeli flag, showing that the university is firmly in Israel's camp, despite the views of the students. Very interesting. So I posted that. Now, some people have said to me that they were not decorated for Israel, right? That those, because it's true, on all the big gates of the campus, there were balloons that were white and blue. And the president of Columbia University has herself said that Columbia stands with Israel, and these students, their behavior is unacceptable. They're punishing students for their protests. There's been kids that have been, college kids have been kicked out of their dorms and suspended from campus because they're doing these protests. So I posted that, and some people said, well, those balloons are not actually to support Israel. Those balloons are just the school colors. And apparently, technically, Columbia University school colors are blue and white. However, I have been to Columbia University many times in my life. They don't usually have it decorated with balloons that are blue and white. And it's not like it's the first day of school. It's not like, it's Earth Day, and I'll talk about that later. But, is it just for Earth Day? They got the school colors out there. That was totally a political statement. Somebody said, no, it wasn't a political statement, blah, blah, blah. I don't buy it, right? If your campus is all over international media, and there's huge press conferences going on about how students are protesting Israel, and the president of the campus is giving thunderous speeches about how they love Israel and all of that. The fact that they deck out the gate of the campus in balloons that are the same color as the Israeli flag, I don't think that's just random. I don't think it's an accident. And thank you, Gala. I'm glad you like it. We're going to show that here a little bit later. But anyway, let's continue. So just so you know, and before we get to the next part, so this is here, like that's the gate, right? Those are the students that are protesting inside, and basically that's kind of what it was all day. There'd be students that were protesting inside the campus, and then there would be the crowd of protesters outside the campus, right? And they'd be like, and there'd be a line of cops between them. There'd be like protest cages, and they'd be like cheering for each other, basically, more or less. That's what was happening all day, right? It was a protest divided by the campus fence. That was kind of the story of the whole day. And I understand there were quite a few students protesting, inside. And that when the walkout happened, most of the college professors canceled their classes. Most of the students were out there, and that it was a quite massive walkout inside of the campus. But anyhow, I'll show you some other things. So one thing I made a point of doing, just a couple different places, I saw people arguing about Israel versus Palestine. There was a couple dozen pro-Israel people. The Jewish Defense League, which is a terrorist organization, the Israeli government designates them as a terrorist organization. And technically, they dissolved in the United States. It was like a group started by Rabbi Meir Kahane during the 1970s, and they were like pro-Israel guys who would go around beating up Arab Americans and beating up black people who moved into Jewish neighborhoods and stuff like that. And then Rabbi Meir Kahane, who founded the organization, he dissolved it and moved to Israel in the 80s. So, but there's a couple people, and I don't know who they are, and you see them at pro-Trump rallies, and they call themselves the Jewish Defense League of New York City. And I don't know if because technically the Jewish Defense League no longer exists, the original one. So I don't know who they are, but there's a couple people that you see at Trump rallies that are there. There's a couple like evangelical folks that are Trump supporters that were there. And then there was a layer of just very pro-Israel people that were there. Only a couple dozen of them, but they had big American flags, big Israeli flags, big Trump hats, and they were not liking the students. And so at one point, there were two students who were Jews for Palestine, and they were like on the margins of the press conference that was being given. And so they were like, they wanted to come and like kind of antagonize the press conference that the government officials were giving. So they actually started having an argument with the pro-Israel people. And so I filmed it. I filmed some of it, right? So yeah, I'll show you that. That's what's next. Yeah, this is when the pro-Israel people like surrounded these two Jews for Palestine students, right? I think they're Columbia students, and they kind of were arguing with them. And you hear some of the argument here.
Because it's completely anti-American. If I make money and I make a certain amount when I work for it, you should not be able to take that away.
You're an idiot.
So,
you know what Hamas will do? Jack is. Just take what fucking told you, idiot.
You're a chicken for them.
I'm a chicken for them?
Yeah, you should go to Gaza.
Can you explain further what you mean by that?
You should go to Gaza.
I should go to Gaza to be a chicken?
There's no one left there. You should fight for them. Yeah.
I should go to Gaza to be a chicken, is what you're saying.
You are a chicken.
What do you mean exactly?
Would you go to Gaza?
Would you go to Gaza?
Right now, no, because I don't want to get bombed and killed.
So you wouldn't?
No,
I'd rather be able to eat, like no one's eating there right now.
all right, so what would you want for a solution? Because Israel is going to exist no matter what. So Israel's always going to exist. It's been existing since 1948 and exists. So that's a reality that a lot of the so-called far-left socialist Marxist commies don't want to accept. So based on that, Israel's going to exist. So what do you think should happen? Do you agree with like a two-state solution? Or how about fighting to get rid of Hamas?
So yeah, and there were a lot of like, and you have to wonder, there were a lot of people that were like you almost feel like they're like professional pro-Israel people who just kind of showed up at the protest to like stand on the margins, and they wanted to have really long arguments with you about Israel. And I found them to be rather obnoxious because I was there to do my job. I interviewed pro-Israel people, right? We always have balanced coverage, right? I'm not against that. I interviewed them, but they wanted to stand there and have an argument with me about my particular views and such. And I had no interest in doing that. I was there to do my job. And like that woman in particular, like, she was there all day, just kind of lurking around the protests as there is like, well, I can convince you to support Israel. Listen to me. And are these people being paid? Are they just volunteers or what? I found those people to be somewhat obnoxious. But anyhow, I'll keep showing you different things that happened throughout the day. I mean, it was a lot of the same stuff. I mean, it was just kind of two people in a protest cage yelling at each other for 5 hours. But I got a little bit of footage here and there of different things. And as you can see, that sign, I will say this, right? And of course, you're not going to see this on mainstream TV, right? No one wants to mention this, but right? This sign here says the Torah preaches life and not death and theft, anti-Zionist Jews. The majority of the pro-Palestine crowd were Jewish, right? And there's no way around that, okay? I mean, I interviewed people in that crowd. I interviewed one student, very dark-skinned, black-haired woman. I assumed she was an Arab, and then she ended the interview by saying she was a Sephardi Jew. And the overwhelming majority of the people that were at the pro-Palestine side were Jewish students on the campus that are woke, older like peace activist kind of people that protested the Vietnam War, and they were Jewish. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the pro-Palestine crowd were Jewish. There were some Arabs there, but actually it was kind of interesting. I overheard some people talking. A lot of the Arab students at Columbia, their parents don't want them to get involved, right? Their parents are like, you went all the way to the United States. You're going to an Ivy League school. Don't get in trouble. And so actually there's the majority of the like woke college kids that are protesting for Palestine are themselves Jewish. Okay. Now, obviously, the people protesting against them are also largely Jewish, but not all of them, right? I mean, there were, evangelicals that were Latin American. There were, just Trump supporter guys or whatever. But both sides of the protests were overwhelmingly Jewish. And the idea that this is some kind of campus pogrom, like they're trying to drive the Jews off the campus, that's just so far from reality. Now, I will say that there were a lot of, I mean, it's like you can't miss it, right? If you're a pro-Israel student, I can imagine you wouldn't be thrilled, being there because, the whole campus yard, they've got their protests up. I mean, you can't miss it, right? I mean, there's no way you could miss pro-Palestine activism happening at Columbia. So if you're pro-Israel, you wouldn't like it, but it's not because you're Jewish. It's because you're, not pro-Israel, you're pro-Israel. The other thing was there was one chant that the pro-Palestine protesters did that I did not think was strategic. There was one chant, and I forget exactly how it went, but it was like Zionists aren't welcome here, right? And I thought that chant wasn't good because that, first of all, a lot of the main thing that Zionists do is they claim the word Zionist means Jew. And I don't think anyone, and they don't want students to be banned from the college just because they support Israel. I don't think anyone wants that. But if you listen to that chant, you say Zionists aren't welcome here. That's what it gives the impression. Not a good chant. Not a good chant, but, it wasn't my protest, right? I was just there covering it as the media. So who cares what I think, right? Overall, I mean, the students were not anti-Semitic. The students were not anti-Semitic. The students were, I mean, it was both sides of the crowd were Jewish. All the stuff I was hearing in the speeches from the New York City politicians about, oh my God, freedom of religion. What? I mean, it's like no one's freedom of religion was being violated. Nobody's freedom of religion was being violated. So yeah, we'll continue. This I wanted to film. These were two guys who were standing on the edge of the protest, and I know they didn't really agree with the protest, and so I took out my camera and started filming them. And then the one guy's like, please don't film me, so I stopped. But they were kind of standing on the edge of the protest and kind of making comments, right? Like they thought the protests were disrespectful and rowdy. And so I thought I should film them. And the one guy, he doesn't approve of their chant. He says he doesn't like that they were chanting NYPD KKK. And I heard other comments they were making about, it started out, I think when I started filming them, the one guy was saying that they're chanting intifada, and intifada means killing and violence. So the protesters are clearly advocating violence. So I heard that and I thought, I want to take my phone out. I want to film this. And then the other guy was condemning them, saying NYPD KKK. And then they got mad that I was filming them. So I just want to start that interaction. It's kind of interesting. I don't know exactly who these guys were, but they were kind of lurking on the edge of the protest and making, smart comments about how they didn't approve of the protests.
Historically clear. And it involves death every single time.
Yeah, and he's referring to the chant intifada, and he's like, it involves death every single time. Well, it's like Israel's killing people too, if you haven't noticed.
Well, explain to me what NYPD KKK is in solidarity of. Explain to me that, Sam, please.
Well, I think it probably refers to all the black people who've been murdered by the NYPD, and the NYPD then get off. Ramarley Graham. I believe Ramarley Graham was just, he was just walking in his neighborhood, and they wanted to search him, and he ran away because he had a joint in his pocket, and so they burst into his apartment and put bullets through his heart. There's Eric Garner, who was choked to death. When they say NYPD KKK, they're drawing attention to the fact that just like the Ku Klux Klan used to kill black people extrajudiciously and get away with it, now the New York City Police Department does it. Obviously, this is a general, woke protest, and they don't like that the police are there, and they feel like the police are, preventing them from expressing their message, so they're chanting against the cops. I mean, this guy must not have been to many protests, but he and his other wise friend, they were kind of lurking here and making wise comments about how they didn't like the protests.
Explain to me what NYPD KKK is in solidarity of.
Roll the tape back. I just did.
Explain to me that, Sam, please. Because that was what they were saying earlier. So
Hi, please don't.
You said, please don't film me. So then I stopped. Because, I'm not, that was another thing. I will say this, right? And I'll just throw this out there, right? And I got to say this. If you're standing in a goddamn public street, holding a sign, chanting, someone is going to film you, okay? I don't care what you're protesting. Pro-Israel, anti-Israel, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, whatever. If you're standing in a goddamn public street with a sign, chanting, and you're at a protest, and someone takes their phone out and starts filming, shut up, right? And I am so tired of that, right? I never used to deal with that. Years ago, when I was a protester, someone walked up to me with a camera. I was like, thank God someone's filming me. But so many of these, especially these college kids, oh my God, oh, you can't film me. Oh, who are you with? Someone might see me on your channel and I might get canceled. Oh my God. It's like you're doing a public act. Okay, you're being filmed by the security cameras. You're being filmed by the government right now. And I mean, that is one thing. And I have been covering protests for years, and I never used to deal with this, right? I've been covering protests and going to them, but in the last 2 or 3 years, you get these 20-year-olds who are like, oh my God, I'm triggered. I don't want to be filmed. You're at a fucking protest. If you don't want to be filmed, don't have a public demonstration, right? And it's really obnoxious. Well, I want to know who you are before I talk to you. Why? I mean, don't say anything to me. You don't want to say, if you're upset that you're on my YouTube channel, you can tell people I didn't know who he was, or I was just doing what I would have done, whether there's a camera there or not. I mean, grow up, right? That is one thing. And I get this from all sides, Trumpers, liberals, all kinds of people. It's this, oh my God, I don't want to be filmed. Well, then don't protest. Seriously. It's such snowflake behavior. It is really, really like you do realize that in America, the average American is photographed at least 15 times every day, right? And especially if you live in New York City, and especially if you're in Manhattan, you are on camera. If you pick your nose when you're walking down the street, it's on video somewhere in Manhattan. So if you're standing there with a sign chanting, at that point, you are doing something public, and, you're under no obligation to talk to the person. You don't have to give an interview if you're comfortable with them. But, if I pull out my phone and start filming you, or my cameraman starts filming you, you have absolutely no grounds to go, oh my God, who are you with? Can I see your press badge? I want to make sure you're not with some network where I'm going to get in trouble. Shut up. Seriously. You're in a public place. You're having a public protest. People are going to film you. Grow the fuck up. Had to get that out of my skin because, again, I agree with these protesters. No one's more anti-Israel than me, right? I've been spoken at anti-Israel conferences in Iran, but it's just like I really, if you feel like someone's, interviewing you, they might try to make you look stupid. Don't do an interview with them. But the whole like, oh my God, I'm not comfortable being filmed. Give me a break.
Student revolution.
Here is
Okay, so before and I'll show you my reporting later, but so just as someone who's a communist leftist, from that kind of background, I'm no longer affiliated with the left. Mostly, I'm out of the movement to the masses, as I say. But as somebody who spent my whole 20s doing this kind of stuff, I was interested to see who was there. So for those of you that are interested, so yeah, it was communist groups that were running the show. The Party of Socialism and Liberation, the PSL, they were the group that was running the protest, right? And that's what they do. They want to be king of the protest cage. They get the permit, they get the sound system. If anyone wants to speak, they have to go through them. They are the mighty, and that's what they do. That's what PSL exists to do, right? They want to take over the movement. It's what Sam Marcy in the final years of his life oriented his followers. We're going to take over the movement. And that's what Brian Becker and PSL want to do. Take over the movement. They control the protest space. Whatever the latest trendy liberal cause is, they become the king of the protest cage around it. That's their strategy. They were running it. And a couple of their members did get arrested, actually, pretty early in the day while we were at the press conference, like even before the walkout and everything. The NYPD arrested two of them that were like down by the campus, and they like dragged them up to the press conference and kind of paraded them in front of the media, which was very weird. And they were screaming very loudly, "Free Palestine," as they're in handcuffs, and they like took them. And then those people were released a few hours later. It was not a, they weren't detained for the whole 26 hours and stuff. But there were two arrests early in the day. And I understand that there were a number of arrests inside the campus, right? Among the people at the walkout, there were like 100 arrested. There was like some intense scuffling inside the campus, but for the most part, we were outside the campus. You had to have a campus ID to get in. No press was allowed in or anything like that. There were moments where pro-Palestine and pro-Israel people would start shouting at each other. That happened, But anyway, so PSL was basically running the protest, right? That's what they do. And then there were Trotskyite organizations that were selling their newspapers. In fact, right, product placement, right? Right? Why not? Right? Why not? Right? You owe me. Organizations, Trotskyites. The Spartacist League was there. And so I bought the latest issue of the Workers' Vanguard, the Spartacist League newspaper. They're endorsing PSL in the upcoming election, which I was quite surprised by. And I renewed my subscription, and they even gave me a free copy, $5. I subscribed to the Workers' Vanguard, the Orthodox Trotskyite magazine. And then I gave them my $5. They even gave me Spartacist magazine, the breakdown of hegemony and the struggle for workers' power. These are the Orthodox Trotskyists, the Ortho-Trots, and they gave me all the stuff. I asked them what they're doing for the Uhuru case, and they said, "Oh yeah, it's very, very important," and then completely changed the subject, which I'm like, how is that not like the focus of your activism? Like they're trying to outlaw being anti-imperialist. They were just like, "Oh yeah, Uhuru is important." Wanted to engage them a little bit, and some of my reading about Michel Pablo and stuff, they didn't want to go there. But the woman, it was one of their organizers who I guess is from Austria. And she was telling me that the Spartacist League is organizing a protest at the Austrian embassy later, or the Austrian consulate, because they feel Austria is suppressing the rights of Trotskyites or something like that. The Internationalist Clubs, which is another Orthodox Trotskyite group, they have a presence on the campuses. They're a split from the Spartacist League, the Internationalist Clubs. They were there. They're another Orthodox Trotskyist group. Socialist Alternative was there as well. I saw a couple of their people with signs. And then that was it for the protest. I mean, a lot of just kind of students, and then And then a few blocks away, not at the actual protest, but a few blocks away, the Revolutionary Communist Party, the followers of Bob Avakian, had a whole like elaborate display set up. And I wish I had taken a picture of it because it was really something. They had like plastic tubes, and they had like a big sign, and it's like, you know, the U.S. imperialism is the cause of Israeli crimes, and then below it said, "Get with the real revolution." And they had the bullhorn out, and there were maybe 10 of them, and they were yelling about Bob Avakian. They were on the bullhorn talking about Bob Avakian is the leader. Get down with the real revolution. Get down with Chairman Bob Avakian. And it was a little weird because they weren't part of the main protest. They were just kind of like on the edge of the campus with their elaborate, you know, display set up, and they were kind of yelling very loudly at everyone who went by about get down with the real revolution, man, or whatever. So that was basically, you know, for those of you that are interested in communist groups and communist organizations and what they do, that's who was there. PSL was running the the protest cage. The Trots were selling their newspapers, and the RCP was set up a few blocks away, yelling at everyone about how Chairman Bob Avakian has the answer. I will say these protests have really changed. Years ago, there used to be a lot more people who did this kind of stuff, and there were a million of these little groups. And you'd go to like a protest like this, and there'd be like 25 different little tiny communist groups. Not anymore. Not anymore. Now the communist stuff on the college campuses has really gotten a lot smaller. You know, most of the communist groups have kind of faded away. You know, I didn't see the Workers' World Party. I think the ISO, the International Socialist Organization, no longer exists. They used to be the main campus organization for a long time. The main campus, like lefty group, was called the ISO, the International Socialist Organization. That was interesting. So, you know, I mean, it's interesting to see how the left has changed, because what's weird is that socialist and communist ideas are far more popular than they've ever been, right? I mean, never in my lifetime has communism and socialism been so popular, especially with younger people. But yet the actual communist groups are dying mostly. I mean, PSL has some energy. The RCP is still kicking. I understand that there's a Trotskyite group, the International Marxist Tendency, that suddenly has a lot of funding and money. They call themselves the Revolutionary Communist Organization or something like that, and they've been getting a lot of publicity. But ultimately, compared to what it used to be, and it's weird. It's very, very weird, because you'd think that with communism becoming so popular and so many people on the internet and social media talking about communism, communist orgs would be much bigger, but they ain't. But anyway, so now I'm going to show you the reporting I did for RT, my live from the campus.
Here as tensions continue to escalate in New York, it's as pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli students at Columbia University take part in demonstrations now entering day 5. Our correspondent is on the scene.
Well, we're here outside of Columbia University, and this is the center of the boiling controversy in New York City right now. Inside the campus, there is an encampment that's been set up to support the Palestinians, to denounce the campus and its investment and financial ties to the Israeli government. Now, there are widespread condemnations of these protests coming from the city officials and local politicians, as well as leaders of the university. They say these protests are somehow offensive to students of Jewish heritage, making them uncomfortable, etc. However, the students are refusing to abandon their protest. Now, the campus has been locked down, and as you can see, we're here outside of the campus, where there has been a crowd of hundreds of pro-Palestine demonstrators for the past several hours expressing their support for the students. Now, there have also been a number of pro-Israel folks here waving Israeli flags and American flags, and there have been arguments between them. There were several arrests earlier today, but this
is part of something that's happening all across the United States. There has been similar protests and an encampment set up at Yale University. There's a recent protest encampment that started at the University of Michigan, and it seems like students who object to their university's financial ties to Israel have decided to make themselves known with encampments 24/7 on the campus. Now, in New York City, this is particularly controversial. There's been widespread condemnation from politicians, but the students say this is a matter of their freedom of speech, their right to express themselves, and furthermore, there are some pointing out that Ivy League schools like Columbia and Yale play a very international role for the United States, and it's a place for the United States to show that it has room for pro-Palestinian sentiments and Muslims and others. However, those schools are very closely tied in with Israel financially. A lot of their biggest donors are big supporters of Israel, so it puts those universities in a very precarious situation. A lot of anger here coming from both sides. People don't like the situation. People feel that the students are exercising their freedom of assembly, their freedom to protest, and being intimidated and threatened. Others feel they're making a hostile environment for Jewish students, so it's a lot of disagreement here. Hundreds of police surrounding the campus. The campus is locked down. There's protesters inside, and there's lots of protesters outside.
All right. So yeah, that was my report. That was live on the air. That was my report. And basically everything I said there kind of gives you an understanding of what was happening there. The other thing that I will say, that last point that I made, and that points to something very, very important. And if you read, The Grand Chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski, the Cold War strategist, in the very first chapter, he talks about how important Ivy League schools like Columbia, like Harvard, like Yale are for the United States, that rich people and high achieving students from all over the world go to those schools. And it's at those schools they make connections and they learn to love the United States and they become tied in with American businesses, etc. And the Ivy League schools have a really, really, really important role to play for U.S. imperialism. And you are absolutely right, Jonathan. The School of International Studies at Columbia University, it used to be called the Center for Communist Studies. Now it's called the International Relations School or something like that. It's where Brzezinski comes out, who's Zbigniew Brzezinski, and it is a CIA recruiting hub. It is one of the main places that the CIA trains people. Top CIA strategists and operatives operate there. It's a very, very much a CIA, kind of place. And part of the United States convincing people around the world that they should support the United States, they should do business with the United States, is having people come to these Ivy League schools and seeing that in America, Muslims openly practice their faith. Muslims aren't discriminated against. Muslims are allowed to exist, and that in America we believe in freedom of speech, and we have pro-Palestine speakers and pro-Israel, and America is this open, liberal, free society, and that's what we want to bring to your country, some of that freedom, and that we're also a very economically prosperous and wealthy society, no poor people, and that's very much what these schools are about. And if you go to the campus of Harvard, you go to Columbia University, Columbia University is in Harlem, but the neighborhood around Columbia University doesn't look a lot like the rest of Harlem, right? And it's pretty gentrified. Not all of Harlem is completely gentrified, but that area is really gentrified. You go to Cambridge, where Harvard is. I mean, these places don't reflect what America is really like. But bringing people from around the world to Ivy League schools and showing them that America is so awesome and open and stuff, that's really important. So the majority of the people in the world, in case you didn't know, don't like Israel, right? And it's not just Muslims who don't like Israel. Muslims really don't like Israel. The Arab world doesn't like Israel. Iran doesn't like Israel. People in Central Asia that are Muslim don't like Israel. People in Indonesia and Malaysia, they don't like Israel. But it's more than that. At this point, China is opposing Israel. Russia, as a country, which has very close ties, especially post-Soviet with Israel, doesn't like Israel very much at this point. Latin America doesn't particularly like Israel at this point. I mean, all over the world, the overwhelming majority sentiment, all over the African continent, there's widespread denunciation. Israel is like really widely hated in the world right now. might be the whole, killing thousands of people thing, like the bombardment of Gaza and murdering children and not stopping, right? Since October, Israel has been bombing Gaza around the clock, and they haven't been stopping, and the whole world's been telling them to stop, and they haven't. They even defied a UN Security Council resolution telling them to stop. They didn't even listen. But Israel is really unpopular right now. Very, very, very unpopular at this point. And so if the United States is going to have a relationship with people around the world, people in Africa, people in the Middle East, people in different countries, it needs to show them that America has room for people that share their sentiment. So these Ivy League schools, it's really important for U.S. imperialism to give the impression that pro-Palestinian views are accepted in America, that Muslims are accepted in America. And these schools are in a bind because the job that they're supposed to play for American imperialism would require them to allow there to be pro-Palestine protests. However, many of the donors are pro-Israel. Many of the faculty and people on the boards of these colleges are pro-Israel, and they ain't having it. And so you have this situation where the schools are trying to do what would be more strategic in the interest of American imperialism. But on the other hand, there's just a lot of people that are very well connected, that these schools are very reliant on, who are saying, nope, no pro-Palestine speaking, nothing. Right. And so you have this situation where the Ivy League schools, they're not able to carry out the role that would be overall strategic in the interest of imperialism for them. This is very important to take note. We talk about the divide between the Eastern establishment and the lower levels of capital. The Eastern establishment, the Rockefeller think tanks, the people who cultivated Brzezinski, who became the head of the International Relations School at Columbia, was very much a Rockefeller creation. They understand that, yeah, the USA keeps supporting Israel. Yeah, the USA keeps arming Israel, but they look like they listen to the other side. They make statements against Israel every so often. And no, the hardcore Zionist right wing ain't having it. Nope, no criticism of Israel. Israel does nothing wrong. Israel must always be supported. These students are hateful bigots. I mean, that is their line. And so, you have this push and pull where these important American imperialist institutions, which is what these Ivy League schools are. I mean, they are very important institutions for American imperialism. All the heads of the big major corporations, the people who get on the board of General Electric and Bank of America, they're all going to Columbia. And those folks, they are part of the apparatus of American imperialism. They're going to these Ivy League schools. And these Ivy League schools, on the one hand, they need to play a strategic role, a geostrategic role, court Muslims as allies, show, distance the United States from what Israel's doing. But on the other hand, so many of those folks are just so fanatically pro-Israel. So many people in the ruling class are just so fanatically pro-Israel, they won't let them do it. And this is that Yankee and cowboy war that I keep coming back to. This is a great example of that. So wanted to make that point. Another point that needs to be made while we're talking about this, and there's a few other things we can talk about, but another point that needs to be made while we're still talking about this is that that this is a complete flip this is a flip of left and right. Right. And I pointed this out to many people today who wanted to hear what I had to say. Again, I'm just the reporter. I'm supposed to be listening to them, but people always want to know what I think. So, if they make the mistake of wanting to hear what I think, I'll tell them. And I told pro-Israel people this, they didn't like it. And I told anti-Israel people this, they didn't like it, which is that I remember when Milo Yiannopoulos was coming to college campuses, and the people who didn't want Milo Yiannopoulos to be able to speak, they were saying his words are offensive, which they were, that his jokes, his comedy, his, rhetoric, which is pretty nasty, which it is, was offensive. And so he shouldn't be able to speak. And the right wing was saying, well, what about free speech? And the woke people were saying no free speech for racists. And the anti-woke right wing were saying facts don't care about your feelings, blah, 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 blah. Well, now it's flipped. Now it's Ben Shapiro who doesn't want free speech. Now it's the Trumpers that don't want free speech and that say these students are disrespectful and that it hurts Israeli students' feelings to see these work. I mean, because it hurts their feelings, right? So now it's the pro-Israel students and the Trumpers, it's the Republicans that are saying that these protests should be outlawed, that these students don't have the right to say what they're saying because it might hurt somebody's feelings. And it's the woke people that are saying we should have the right to free speech. And just because you call somebody racist doesn't mean they don't have the right to say what they want to say. Well, both sides are being hypocritical, right? On the one hand, the woke people are being hypocritical because they know that being pro-Israel, they know that being anti-Israel is not being anti-Jewish, but that is the widespread perception in the media and elsewhere. And so they've been labeled anti-Jewish. They've been labeled as being racist. And on that basis, people are trying to shut down their freedom of speech. And they're saying, well, no, we should have the right to say it. Just because somebody thinks we're racist doesn't mean that the government should be able to shut us down. Well, I agree with them. But that should also apply to Milo Yiannopoulos. And that should also apply to all kinds of people. We shouldn't be supporting the capitalist government taking away people's rights based on calling them racist, because it will be used inevitably against people that are anti-imperialist. And in this instance, right, these students that are opposing the crimes of Israel's a big part of the Western imperialist system. They're seeing that all the stuff they said, no free speech for racists, silence, this speech triggers me, all of that is being turned around against them. Well, there you go. But the other side is also being hypocritical, because they were the ones who said, oh, we're all for free speech. We're totally in favor of free speech. But now that there's a big movement, very, very big movement of people on the campuses who are against what Israel is doing, suddenly, oh, no free speech for them. That might hurt Israeli students' feelings. That might make students uncomfortable. Well, you think Milo Yiannopoulos didn't make people uncomfortable? You think Ann Coulter didn't make people uncomfortable? And it's a flip. What I think is interesting is that there are people on both sides who see through this, right? Candace Owens is a right-winger. She sees through this. There are also leftists who see through this, leftists who are not thrilled about the woke thing, right? And I mean, we know them, right? And there's more than just the Center for Political Innovation, right? There's, a guy named radio host Don DeBar. He saw through the Trump thing and he saw through the woke thing at the beginning, right? There's the Philadelphia Free School, Dr. Tony Montero. There's a layer of people that come out of socialism and communism, who understand that the woke thing and was enabling a crackdown. So there's smart people on both sides, but the bulk of the left, because the bulk of the left that are right on the Palestine thing, they're 100% right. They're still being a little bit hypocritical because they were the same people that were out there saying no free speech for racists. And the bulk of the right, who are wrong on this issue, are also being hypocritical because they were the ones out there defending free speech and suddenly they forgot all about it. So that's worth pointing out. But I do want to add that this campus occupation thing is going national. There is an occupation at Yale that has already taken place. That's very cool. And now I understand there's an occupation at the University of Michigan. The students have set up out at the University of Michigan. At University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, there's a lot of Arab students out there. Dearborn, Michigan is the largest concentration of Arab Americans. But then also I understand NYU, they tried to have an occupation today, and the NYPD, it looks like they cleared it out. This is the video earlier of of the NYPD trying to kind of shut down the occupation at NYU. This video was going around. Yeah, so the students at NYU are attempting some kind of occupation, and that was the police making clear that they don't support them. And I do appreciate the super chats that are coming in, and I'll be answering them later tonight. That's after the roll call. But thank you, Miracle Beam. I do appreciate it. Any more super chats people have, So Yeah, I will answer them. I think there's Robert had a super chat that I'm trying to get to answer tonight about Bitcoin. But anyhow, so anyhow, I wanted to also show this video because I saw this video and I was very disturbed by it. I was very disturbed by it, and it's like there's so many videos like this that it's like, you know, if Zionists say it themselves, like, you're not anti-Semitic for pointing it out, right? Because there's a lot of things that if you say, right, about what Israel does or what pro-Israel people do, right? If you say that, well, they say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. That's an anti-Semitic stereotype, blah, 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 right? I mean, the fact that if you criticize Israel, the media blackballs you, and that the word has gotten out in media circles that it's a career killer to oppose Israel. Well, they say, well, that's a conspiracy theory, Caleb. That's like saying the Jews control the media. No, it's saying that U.S. imperialism is aligned with Israel and that the pro-Israeli movement has a lot of influence in media circles, and they will try to destroy your reputation and destroy your career. And if you're in mainstream media, if you're in Hollywood, or you're in mainstream television or show business, if you're on Broadway and you become outspoken against Israel, they will try to end your career. And it's not the Jews that will do that. It is the apparatus in the United States that is very pro-Israel, which is the mainstream apparatus, not much of which is not Jews. But if you point this out, people say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's true that anti-Israel speech does result in people getting marginalized. So, there's a lot of things like that if you point that out, people say you're anti-Semitic. So then that's why videos like this, and I'm going to show you this video. Videos like this are really, really important, because this is not some anti-Semite saying this, right? This is not some internet conspiracy theorist. This is not some old guy sitting there saying, oh, no, like this guy is literally the author of the movie Borat, right? You ever see Sacha Baron Cohen's movie Borat? This guy is one of the screenwriters of that movie, and his name is Lee Kern. Lee Kern made this video, right? And this shows you where the Zionist crowd are at right now, right? And I'm going to show you this video by a hardcore Israel supporter. And this is blatant honesty here. Blatant honesty. He's telling you what's going on right now.
This is something I've written about, but it's so important that I'm making this quick, short video as well. We have to stop trying to educate anti-Semites, and we have to hurt them instead.
Now keep in mind, anyone who disagrees with Israel is anti-Semitic. Even if you're for a two-state solution, even if you denounce Hamas, if you're against Israel, they consider you anti-Semitic. So he just said, stop trying to convince people who disagree with Israel and start hurting them. All right, so this is the guy who wrote Borat, a prominent Hollywood screenwriter, calling for harm to anyone who disagrees with him, who opposes Israel. Anyone who considers anti-Semitic should be harmed. He just said that.
Of education has not worked. It has not worked. It is the worst it has ever been. It has factually failed. This is the most dangerous time to be a Jew in our living lifetime.
No, it's not. And it's like, I was just at Columbia, and I was in a crowd full of people protesting Israel, and the majority of them were Jewish. No one's going out and harming Jewish students, right? There was a video going around where they had a clip of one person saying, go back to Poland, right? And it was like one student who was somewhere who said something, and they said, go back to Poland. And they said, this is the student calling for all Jews to be put in Auschwitz. Well, I don't know what the context of this student saying go back to Poland is. It may be that many of the Jews who migrated to Palestine came from there or something, but the idea of saying go back to Poland is calling for Jews to be gassed in Auschwitz. That's a ridiculous. You want to talk about a stretch, right? Poland has apologized how many times? It pays reparations. Even though it was the Nazis who occupied Poland, who did the Holocaust in Poland, Poland still has to pay reparations to Israel. I don't know how that works, right? You know, if somebody invades your country and overthrows you and then uses your country to commit a crime, I don't know how that's your fault, right? I think it's the Nazis that should pay reparations, not the Polish people who were also exterminated. Millions of them died at the hands of the Nazis. And anyway, here we go.
Education has failed to stop those who are anti-Semitic. Stop trying to cure them. Stop trying to heal them. Stop thinking it's your job to be some kind of nurse or therapist for them or savior for their fucking hatred. Stop trying to heal anti-Semites and hurt them. That will make them stop. They will not stop because of intellectual ideas. They will not stop because you magically put butterflies and unicorns and fairies and love into their heart. They will stop out of fear because they know they will get hurt.
Well, maybe the reason that you don't stop people from criticizing Israel with intellectual arguments or by being nice is because Israel is actually doing bad things. And everyone in the fucking world can see that. And that the death count on October 7th was like 1,200, and the death count in Gaza at this point is well over 40,000. Maybe people know that. Maybe people have seen what Israeli soldiers do. It's like, it doesn't occur to this guy that maybe he's just wrong. And maybe, just maybe, people aren't changing their views, not because they're hateful bigots who just hate you and want to kill you because of your ethnicity. Maybe they just don't like what Israel does. Maybe it's that.
They will stop because it is unpleasant to get hurt. And when I say hurt, I'm talking, of course, within the law, every legal means available to you. If someone transgresses and is anti-Semitic, you must, to the best of your ability, ruin their fucking life.
Wow. If you disagree with Israel to the point that he decides you're anti-Semitic, you must ruin their fucking life. That's what he just said. Ruin their life. Folks, there are many people who disagree with me on many, many issues. There are people I know that are pro-Israel. I don't want to ruin their lives. I might disagree with them about that issue. I might disagree with them about other issues, but I really, the idea of ruining their life because they disagree with me, not something I want to do.
Ruin their fucking life as best you can, without remorse, without pity, and without any excitement. Just factually, objectively cause them pain.
Right. Ruin people's lives because they disagree with you. This is classic. This is absolutely classic. And again, if you said that people do this, they would call you anti-Semitic, right? If you pointed out that, there's people in the media that will try to destroy your reputation and career if you criticize Israel, they'd say, well, that's anti-Semitic. That's a conspiracy theory. He's saying it. A prominent Hollywood guy is saying that he's going to try and ruin your fucking life if you disagree with Israel. Like, he's saying it. He's saying it. It's not a conspiracy theory to say that there's people in the media, there's people in Hollywood who will try to destroy your reputation if you oppose Israel. He's telling you. This is a Hollywood guy. This guy wrote the Borat movie. And he's right here telling us if you disagree and he considers you anti-Semitic, he will try to ruin your fucking life.
Legally, with their reputation, financially.
With their reputation. So tell lies. That's legal, isn't it? He said within the law. So lie about people. Financially ruin people.
Damage them, hurt them. Maybe they'll think twice, and maybe other anti-Semites will think twice too. It's not your job to educate them. It's not going to work. By all means, continue educational programs in order to reach those who aren't anti-Semitic or who haven't transgressed, but stop trying to educate away anti-Semitism. We need to hurt those who try.
This whole video is all about saying he doesn't want to educate it away. And he just said, but continue the educational programs. Well, I thought you just said stop.
Transgress, but stop trying to. It's not your job to educate them. It's not going to work. By all means, continue educational programs.
Well, but you just said stop trying to educate. So what's the point of educational? Your whole video is you saying stop educating people. And then he just said, but continue educational programs. Well, that if you're stopping educating people, that would involve stopping educational programs. This man needs to like get a better producer.
In order to reach those who aren't anti-Semitic or who haven't transgressed, but stop trying to educate away anti-Semitism. We need to hurt those who try to hurt us.
No one's trying to hurt you because they don't like what Israel's doing. Okay? I mean, this is like, you're safe. You're a big Hollywood guy. You've got a very comfortable life. No one's trying to hurt you. No one is trying to hurt you, right? If you were in Israel where there's a military confrontation going on, maybe that would be different. But you have an amazingly comfortable life. You wrote an amazingly popular movie. You're a millionaire. Like how are you oppressed, my friend? How are you so oppressed that you just have to hurt your oppressor? I'm not following this. Really not following this, right?
Deeper, more immediate, more emotionally understood thing in the very cells of your body to be scared of getting hurt, to be scared of experiencing a cost to your life and reputation and your pocket and your freedom. So
can you imagine if the other side said this? Can you imagine if some Arab made a video saying we got to hurt Zionists? We just got to hurt them. We got to go out there and hurt them. Oh, can you imagine he'd be thrown in jail for advocating hate crimes? No, seriously. I mean, imagine that you're a student. You were a student at Columbia, and you said, you know what? I think we should hurt Zionists. You'd be banned from the university. They're kicking kids out for saying from the river to the sea. And this guy is on here making videos calling for destroying people's reputations, destroying people financially. I mean, oh my God. Oh my God. This is indeed dangerous stuff, Sherry. I mean, for him to make these statements, I mean, and he's proud of what he's saying, right? He will try to destroy the careers and reputations and financially and harm people who disagree with him.
The future of stopping anti-Semitism. It's not education, it's fucking hurting anti-Semites. And it's very important. It's quite a subtle but big shift. It's not subtle, actually. It's a big fucking shift of where we're at. That is how to do it. The current methodology has not worked. It has failed. Have the grandeur and the intellectual honesty to admit that this is the worst it's ever been, and all of the programs and initiatives.
If this is the worst it's ever been, my friend, you haven't had it hard. The Palestinians, they're doing a lot worse than you are. I'll just put it that way. There's a lot of people in this country that are not living the life of a wealthy screenwriter. So give me a break. This is the worst it's ever been. If this is the worst it's ever been, you've had it pretty good, my friend.
Is to try and educate people against anti-Semitism. They have fucking failed. So we need to instill a fear in people and pain and let them know that there's a fucking cost if they hurt us, and that we fucking unashamedly will stand proudly behind the pain we will administer to anyone who tries to fuck with us or fucking hurt us. Okay? And that's all I want to say. That's the fucking way. Don't heal anti-Semites, fucking hurt them.
All right, there you go. That is, again, if I were to tell you that there were people that advocated such things, I would be anti-Semitic. You just heard it straight from the mouth of somebody who does have the power to do these things. So there you go. There you go. This is someone who's been arguing with someone all day. This is someone who's internet brained, right? They've been in Twitter wars all day, and they just snap. Yeah, that's why I try to stay off Twitter these days as much as I can. But anyway, folks, that's what I saw at Columbia. So I guess we'll do the roll call now. I've got 4 super chats to answer. Do we have any Rumble rant? Oh, we got some Rumble rants. Chow Kathy and John Peace. So yeah. Oh, it's John McCarthy. Actually, he's just on Rumble. That's pretty cool. Okay. So yeah. So we got, let's do the roll call, names and locations. Then I'll talk to you a little bit about the new textbook and stuff like that, and the retreat and all that. And then I will answer the questions for the rest of the night. Moving right along. Good show. I will say I'm exhausted. If you can't see, I got sunburned a bit at Columbia. But anyway, we got Mark Jones in Utica, New York. We got Nate in Chicago. We got Alex Rickle in Oregon. Names and locations, folks. Names. We got Dave, DW in Savannah, Georgia. We got Robert from Texas, and I'm going to answer Robert's question. Thank you. Thank you. Important. All right. Micah in Las Vegas. Balu from India. Jenny in Cincinnati. Bob Troy in New York. Ian from Chester, England. Johnny. Spectre. Mariah in North Carolina. Balthazar in Oakland. Rose in Minnesota. Joe in Oklahoma City. John McCarthy in Chicago. John McPeace. Patrick in Maine. Alex in Brazil. Peter in Florida. Welcome. Sam in Missouri. Maddie in California. Robert in Oregon. Alex in Brazil. Tyler in Missouri. Just got my new textbook in the mail. It's huge, bigger than the Bible. Yeah. Briggy in Pennsylvania. 1 billion Indian Hindus support Israel. Do all of them? I mean, I know Hindus tend to have opposition to Muslims. They tend to be Israel sympathetic, but I don't know if all of them support Israel. I mean, they might. I mean, it's possible. Jeff in Minnesota. Alex from the state of Florida. Are you the Florida man I read about the other? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Denver, Colorado. San Diego County, XL Step. Southwest Florida, Average American. Southern Oregon, the Gribble Report. Canada, E. Gonzalo in Argentina. There we go. There we go. All righty. So glad to have you all with us here tonight. So I'm going to answer Robert's super chat. I'm going to answer his super chat first because it's been a long time coming. And Robert, a good friend of ours, Robert, he asked me a little while back. I hadn't had a chance to give him a full answer. He asked me about Whitney Webb and her work about Bitcoin and crypto and how the imperialists don't like it. And, you know, I went to Russia and I was talking to different people in Russia, right? And I got to tell you that it appears that Bitcoin is one of those things that can be used. Oh, Crooklyn, there you go. And go Islanders. Bitcoin is one of those things that can be used for good or for evil. But what the ruling elites don't like about it is it's almost canceling out. I don't know if you've seen, but for the longest time, there's been talk of abolishing cash. Right, that's been a really common talking point of some of the main voices of American imperialism, American intelligence. They've been saying, get rid of cash because then they can trace every transaction. And they've been saying, get rid of cash because if you get rid of cash, then everything goes through banks, credit cards, bank cards, debit cards, and we'll be able to keep track of every transaction. But there's a little bit of a problem with that, which is now there's this thing called Bitcoin and crypto. And crypto, it's very hard to tell where it's coming from. It's very, very hard to tell where a crypto transaction originated from. Now you can tell, where somebody, who, if you cash out of your own bank, right? But it's can be very difficult with the different cryptocurrencies to track all of that, right? And that, I guess Bitcoin is trackable. It's a public blockchain. See, I don't know this stuff. And this is why I was hesitant to answer this question, because I don't know the details of this. I'm not into this in the same way. But it seems like there's a feeling among the ruling elite that this stuff is beyond what they're able to trace. And that scares them. It scares them quite a bit. But I've had people argue that with blockchain, it can be the opposite of crypto. Blockchain, potentially gives the potential for every transaction to be, traced. So at the end of the day, this is a new field, right? Technology is the way that humanity will become more free. And that's what I ultimately argue. It is the road to vast abundance. And that's what the Venus Project people get right? That they argue that with technology, you can eliminate scarcity and that would eliminate the need for a state, etc. What they miss, though, is that right now, under capitalism, where profits are in command, technology ends up making a bigger problem because, you know, if we had self-driving cars, we'd have mass unemployment. And they miss the tendency of the falling rate of profit. They miss the problem in capitalism, right? Of, you know, what Peter Coffin has started calling a value crisis, right? I like that because overproduction, there's so many words in Marxism that they're used in Marxist terminology in a very different way than people use them in regular language. And often when people are new and they come around, they hear these words and they assume they know what they mean and they don't. Classic word, neoliberal. Right? I heard so many people use that word incorrectly. They think neoliberal means moderate Democrat. It does not. Neoliberalism is an economic theory, which is more popular with conservatives than with liberals, and it advocates, you know, it's about less state intervention. It's, you know, market liberalism, they call it, less state intervention in the market. Another word that it gets widely used, materialism. When I was a kid growing up in Christian church, they were always condemning the materialism of modern society. And when I got interested in communism, right, I wanted to overcome a society that was all about money and all of that. So I'd hear these communists talking about, we stand for materialism. We have a Marxist materialist way. And I'd be like, wait, what? Well, when Marxists say materialism, they're referring to philosophical materialism, the belief that there is only the material world, that ideas do not define reality. They're not referring to wanting to have lots of stuff, right? The word contradiction, again, when I was a kid, if your mom says, I don't know, if your mom says, go put on your red shoes, and you say, well, no, I want to go put on my blue shoes. You're not supposed to do that because you're contradicting her. Well, that's not what Marxists mean when they say contradiction. Contradiction in the Marxist term refers to the Hegelian dialectic. There's a thesis and an antithesis, and they clash. And through that clash, you get a synthesis, and that history is driven forward by different competing ideas or economic forces clashing against each other, right? There's all these Marxist words that mean different things. So when people hear you say overproduction, they think overproduction means too much stuff. You're making too much stuff. That is not what the concept means. It refers to the fact that the worker cannot buy back what he produces. There is always more product created than there are wages paid out. And I've talked about that a lot. It's a really, really important Marxist concept. However, there are so many videos that are made by people who don't like me and other people that I'm arguing with. And they're like, but Caleb, why is he always talking about overproduction? He's against degrowth. Yes, I'm against degrowth because degrowth is getting rid of production. Overproduction is an impediment to growth. It is something in the capitalist system that makes it so you can't have growth, right? Because technological abundance leads to economic crisis. And so Peter Coffin, I really like this. He started using the phrase value crisis rather than overproduction to explain it. And I think that's a step forward. I'm going to try to start doing that because if you say overproduction, right, people just think too much stuff. And we don't think there's too much stuff. We want there to be so much stuff, so much wealth in society that the need for a government fades away, that everyone can just take what they need and that there's just so much wealth. We're not against wealth. We're not against production, but capitalism has this problem that the more you advance technology, the fewer people get hired. And because of that, the products don't get sold and you have glut on the market. You have a bunch of products that cannot be sold and the price drops and businesses close down. And this is the boom bust cycle of the market. This is the classic boom bust cycle of the market, right? It's, you have a boom when they're producing all kinds of products and making lots of money. Then you have a bust when suddenly people can't buy anymore. And then you have a depression, which is when the market is glutted with products, but everyone's lost their job because, and then eventually you get a boom again, right? And that's the business cycle, right? And it's a cycle of overproduction. It's a cycle of glut, right? That abundance creates poverty. And the more efficient production becomes and the more technology advances, the poorer people get, right? And that this is a built-in problem of the capitalist system. But anyway, back to Robert's question, right? I believe technology has already long surpassed the artificial restraints of capitalism, and that Bitcoin, blockchain, these things represent what in a rational socialist society would be a great thing. But in our society, they don't fit. They don't fit, and they cause lots of problems for all sides, right? And there's a lot of things like this, like self-driving cars, like, like social media, right? Again, social media is actually a really good thing, and we need to start seeing things. There's a quote from Vladimir Lenin. There's a quote from Vladimir Lenin that's a very good one, right? And it's not a short one, right? It's from the essay Three Components and Parts of Marxism. And it's not a short quote, but it's a very, very good one. And I really would like people to know it, right? And it's towards the end of the essay. And he says, people have always been the foolish victims of deception and self-deception in politics, and they always will be until they have learned to seek out the interests of some class or other behind all moral, religious, political, and social phrases, declarations, and promises. Right? Now, that's not a short phrase, but it's really, really, really important, right? I'm going to put it on the screen here, right? People have always been the victim. People have always been the foolish victims of deception and self-deception in politics, and they always will be until they have learned to seek out the interests of some class or other behind all moral, religious, political, and social phrases, declarations, and promises. Meaning that until you start thinking in terms of whose interest is behind this, as long as you see things as abstract, this might be a good idea, that might be a good idea, but until you start thinking whose financial interest is behind this, who benefits from this, until you start thinking that way, you're going to miss the boat, right? You need to not see things in terms of, well, this is good, that's good. You need to see things in terms of, the interests of one class or another. That's the important thing. And that there are many things that in their essence are not bad, but in the hands of the class enemy, they are very bad. But in the hands of our class could be very good, right? Facebook, social media. I think in the hands of our class, they could be a very good thing, right? If you could have, the problem with Facebook, the problem with Twitter, the problem with Instagram is that they are operated, one, to make money, two, to engage in some kind of mind control to control the masses for the ruling class. And so as a result, because they're money oriented, they encourage people to fight with each other. They encourage people to have poor self-esteem. They, on top of that, second of all, because they're used to subtly push certain political messages and all of that, not good politics, etc. But I feel like in a rational society, we could have a social media app that made you smarter. And could you imagine how much better your life would be if there was a social media app that you could check in with, just like Facebook, just like Twitter, and it wasn't making you crazy, and it wasn't making you lonely and angry. It was actually making you a happier, smarter person. It was subtly nudging you to be more psychologically healthy, to be more physically fit, to reach your goals more effectively. Could you imagine how amazing it would be to have a social media app that was making you better, right? And we have the technology for such a thing. It could very easily be done. However, right now, we don't have social media apps that are designed to make you better. We have social media apps that are designed to make money for somebody. And that is not making you better. I'll just tell you that. And on top of that, it's designed to keep you, subservient to the people that own it and the class who own it. Right. But think about it. If you look at social media with class glasses on, it's actually a great invention, but it's in the hands of our class enemy. So it's bad. Right. And there's, I look at Bitcoin like that. I don't think there's something inherently wrong with Bitcoin. I don't think there's something inherently wrong with blockchain, but in the hands of our class enemy and under this system, it's going to be crazy. But I think in a rational society, it could be a great thing. Right. And there's many things like this, right, where I am more interested in the class behind it and who it serves than I am in is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? Artificial intelligence, same thing. There's nothing wrong with artificial intelligence, but it could be used to do a lot of very evil things under the current system. But could you imagine artificial intelligence, what it could be used for? And we had a society where the economy was operated to benefit the people. AI could do great things, but AI is going to displace a lot of jobs. And this whole issue of technology eliminating employment, this is Marxism. This is the basis of Marxism. And that, and this is why, again, now I'm going to talk about this book that we published, right? This is like a college textbook, mind you, right? Like this is like, it's a big book, and it's got a beautiful cover, and it is about anti-imperialist organizing in America. It's 5 chapters long, right? But every chapter is followed by original texts, right? The epigraph, the opening text is, unite all the forces that can be united and build a broad united front against monopoly capital and the imperialist policies of aggression and war. And that is what the book is written with the intention of doing, right? And, the first chapter is on the history of the Communist Party. And, William Z. Foster in particular, I talk about the Wobblies, lots of great photographs, we talk about the Wobblies, we talk about, the founding, the CPUSA, the unemployment councils. This is a photo from Gastonia, the strike in Gastonia, the textile workers, and and then we have in the later pages, then after that, right, we have the very famous anti-war speech of Eugene Debs. The full anti-war speech of Eugene Debs that he went to prison for giving, the anti-war speech of Canton, Ohio, that Eugene Debs was thrown in federal prison for giving. We have the entire speech, not passages from it. We have the entire Eugene Debs anti-war speech published, which is a beautiful speech. And it's also, I must say, a very Christian speech. Eugene Debs, he had a whole speech he gave about the life of Jesus. And Eugene Debs, you read that speech, it's very much an appeal for one to be a loving, moral person. We have a campaign speech from William Z. Foster when he ran for president, in 1932 for a united struggle against starvation. And we have, we've got original texts from the time period that is discussed. That is very important. Now, the next chapter is on Sam Marcy and the global class war tendency, right? And that's an important chapter because we're going over the history of where the PSL came from and all of that, right? And Marxism is very important in the United States. And again, we have a narrative text going over that history, and getting into some real minutia. Like I talk about Michel Pablo, and this is a picture of Michel Pablo and the Trotskyite, the Trotskyite leader, and again from there. We then have original content, right? We have primary source material. We've got The Dangers of Trotskyism by Moishe Olgin, the CPUSA founder. His understanding of why Trotskyism is bad. We have Mao's official statement that oppose racial discrimination by U.S. imperialism. The statement that Mao gave to support Martin Luther King Jr. that the Sam Marcy followers distributed 20,000 copies of at the rally where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. They had this leaflet that said 1/4 of humanity is on your side, and they distributed this statement to 20,000 people that attended the I Have a Dream rally. We have Bill Epton's speech to the court. Bill Epton was a communist leader in New York City, who was thrown in prison for putting up posters about police brutality. And he gave this very eloquent speech to the court when he was convicted about communism and about anti-imperialism, connecting the struggle of the people of the Congo and the people of Vietnam with police brutality. Beautiful speech, right? We've got, Sam Marcy and his speech to the Socialist Scholars Conference in New York City, where he's basically calling them out for the fact that they all were cheering for the fall of the Soviet Union and how dare they, we've got Sam Marcy's letter to the workers of Louisiana that he wrote, urging them not to vote for David Duke, and saying that David Duke, he might be appealing to them and their alienation from the system, but he's, racism is not the answer. A beautifully worded letter, so again, we got original source material, right? The next chapter after that is on the new communist movement of the 1970s. We got all kinds of history. You know, there's the Emmett Till. You know, we have that photo of that, the free speech movement at Berkeley. There's the famous photo of Mario Savio standing on the car during the free speech movement. You know, at Berkeley, you know, for the right of students to organize on campus. We talk about the Black Panthers, right, and the Black Panther Party and their role. And then from there, you know, we talk about the Progressive Labor Party. We talk about, it's funny, I mean, I was just at Columbia University today. That was Columbia University in 1968, right? That very same building that I was looking at today in 1968, after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, the students seized the university, you know, very famous, you know, I talk about all this history, right? You know, there's the October League, and there's, you know, people marching with Che Guevara, and, you know, all of that. I mean, this is important history. We're going over the history. And anyway, and then after we go over that history, right, and after we talk about the new communist movement of the 70s, we talk about DRUM, the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement. There's, you know, 2 black workers who occupied their factory during Wildcat Summer in 1973, Detroit. And I mean, we talk about all of this important history, right? And then, you know, after that, just like in all the other ones, we've got some original texts, right? We've got The Crisis of Petty Bourgeois Radicalism by Gus Hall, which was the Communist Party, their take on the new communist movement of the 70s and what was going on then. We've got Why We Carry the NLF Flag, which was a leaflet that was distributed by people that supported the Vietnamese National Liberation Front. We've got, you know, an article from the Guardian newspaper, Weatherman Conducts a War Council, you know, talking about some of the debating that was going on against the Weathermen and their left adventurous tactics. You know, we got all kinds of stuff, right? This is all kinds of original source material, right? And from there, we've got a section on divisions in the ruling class. That's part 4, is divisions in the ruling class. Bunch of original source material there. I've got a section on Lyndon LaRouche, because I think Lyndon LaRouche, despite, you know, my disagreements, etc., you know, I think that he's an important figure, and that, you know, it's called The Case of Lynn Marcus is the section on Lyndon LaRouche. It's called The Case of Lynn Marcus. And I talk about the labor committees, which were, you know, Lyndon LaRouche's Trotskyite communist group, and the role that they played, and what their understanding about degrowth and Malthusianism and the important contribution that they made. And I talk about that and the computer revolution. And of course, we've got original source material. You know, we've got a lot in this text. Let me just put it that way. There's a lot in here. And then the final chapter is, you know, thoughts on going forward about the Center for Political Innovation. And we have the World Anti-Imperialist Platform and their founding document, the Paris Declaration. We've got some internal documents that I wrote when I was in the Workers' World Party, you know, that I'm making public for the first time, so you can understand the roots of our organization and the kind of thinking that gave birth to the Center for Political Innovation. There's a lot in this book, right? And I'm warning you all, I am going to jack the price up. Right now, we have, for organizational reasons I won't get into, we have made it minimum price. We are getting 0 royalties on this book, right? After a few days, I think probably Friday, right before our retreat begins, I'm going to set the price so that we actually make some royalties off this book. But right now, it's only $16. So, you know, get it while you can, right? I'm staying that against my own interest, because right now I'm not making anything off of it, but we do need to make royalties off this book, because we put so much into this, you know, we need to get something back for the organization. Yeah, this is our new textbook, but the cover, there's a reason we picked this cover, right? Because these are soldiers from the Vietnam War, black and white together, soldiers, you know, and they are saying, we won't fight another rich man's war, right? And it's that kind of movement, a class-conscious, anti-imperialist movement that we need to build. And this book is written so that you can understand our perspective for building such a movement in our time, right? And it is 532 pages long, and they are not small pages. And yeah, I mean, this is like a college textbook, right? That you would pay $300 for. We won't jack the price up that high. Don't worry. But this is our new book. I'm very proud of it, I must say. I put a lot of work into this. This is years of work, years of research, years of investigation, years of wrangling, and a lot. And Elizabeth and Marissa also put a huge amount of work into this. You have no idea how hard they worked. And shout out to the proofreader, Rebecca, if you're watching. I don't know if you want to be public or not. Rebecca is out there. She proofread it. This is amazing, right? I must say, I'm talking about my own work and I'm saying it's amazing, but it's a collective effort, and it is the result of, and you will read this book. This book will give you an understanding of what a real communist movement is, right? You will learn about the real communists of the 1930s. You'll learn about the confused attempts to build something by the Marxites. You'll learn about the attempts of the new communist movement. You'll learn about the divisions in the ruling class, and you'll learn about our perspective. This book is really something special. I just must tell you this, right? This book, this is volume 2, right? Volume 1 is We Are City Builders, much smaller, but this is volume 2, and this book you will learn so much from this book. Okay. I'm just telling you, right? Maybe, I'm just telling you, you will really learn a lot. There's a lot of knowledge to be had from this book. So I'm very proud of it. I'm glad I finally got my hands on a copy today. I'm really thankful to all the people who helped make this book a reality. I see all these people in the chat that say they like it. Please drop a review on Amazon if you liked it. Drop a review on Amazon, tweet about it, share it. Like this is an important piece. And, again, we're at this point, hopefully it changes in a few days, but at this point, we're not making any royalties off of it. We just want people to read it. This is a book that was published in order to teach people, right? We want people to understand it. So read it, tweet about it, share it, promote it, get people to read it. Right. If you know somebody who wants to build an anti-war movement, if you know somebody who considers themselves an anti-imperialist, if you know somebody who is wrangling with these ideas, get a copy into their hands. Get them to read this. This is the knowledge. I have spent my life. I'm a 36-year-old man. I have spent my life compiling information and learning all the contents of this book. Right. And a lot of the contents of this book are things that are very hard to find. Right. When you first get interested in Marxism and communism, you read the old books by Marx and Lenin, and they're very hard to get through. But I made a really big point of including a lot of original texts that are, from actual mass organizers like Elizabeth Gurley Flynn and Foster and Bill Epton and others. The idea is you will read this book and it will provide you with a concise understanding. So I'm very proud of this piece of writing. I guess I've made my point, but here we go. I mean, this is volume 2, the second Center for Political Innovation educational manual, Out of the Movement to the Masses, Anti-Imperialist Organizing in America. Yeah. And a lot of work went into this. I'll just tell you, a lot of work went into it. Right. Yeah. So drop a review, right? Ian Foster says he read it. He's reading it. He likes it. Drop a review on Amazon, tweet about it, share it. But yeah, let's do that. All right. So now we've got two super chat or 2 Rumble rants from one from Chow Kathy and one from John McCarthy. So the first one's from John McCarthy. And John McCarthy's super chat says, or his Rumble rant says, now they are trying to treat Iran like North Korea and take away your passport if you travel there. They're going to have a hard time with that one, John. I think that there's a lot of Republicans, who have been saying that for a long time. I'll be curious if they're able to do that. The reason being that there are a number of American and Iranian dual citizens. And on top of that, there are a lot of Americans, American Iranians who go back and forth. North Korea, there's no dual citizens. There's very few North Koreans who come to America, like 0, except for the UN mission people. That's it. But, with Iran, it's very different, right? There's a lot of people in Southern California in particular who fly back and forth. There's a lot of people in Michigan who fly back and forth, right? There's a lot of Iranians in America who left at the time of the revolution, but they still got family over there. And it's not like North Korea. So for them to implement that law would be quite different. It would be quite a different thing to do. It would be quite a different thing to do. Now, it's not to say they won't do it, right? Trump did his temporary, travel ban or whatever. But I mean, it's possible. But that would be quite a move. It would be quite a move. Among wealthier Iranians, there are many of them that frequently travel back and forth. I find it, there would be a lot of money that would be lost by the American ruling class. It's just like with Russia, right? U.S. economic relations with Russia are at an all-time low, but Brighton Beach still exists, right? There's a lot of people in Coney Island and Brighton Beach. It's funny, I actually talk about Coney Island and Brighton Beach in here because that's where Sam Marcy grew up. But, Sam Marcy was born in Ukraine. And he grew up in speaking Russian. Like, there are a lot of people, right, in the United States who are going back to Russia, who are dual citizens. And you can sanction and you can arrest people and all of that. But, if you really completely cut off a country like they've done with North Korea, it's very difficult to do that. And that's one of the strengths I've noticed of like China in particular. During the Mao years, China was completely cut off and there was barely anything. But now, if the USA wants to cut off China, good luck. They're trying to cut them off. But China has got there's so much business connections. It's very hard, right? A lot of Republicans would like to just completely cut off China, but that's not realistic, right? And that, North Korea is a country that's been locked down in a complete state of war. They have a completely state centralized economy and pretty militarized economy. So it's easy to just cut them off. Iran is not that way. Russia is not that way. China is not that way. And, again, if you were to just outlaw traveling to Iran, any business or interactions with Iran, there's a lot of people in Sunset Park, in Beverly Hills, right? Southern California, there's big Iranian communities. There's going to be a lot of businesses closing down. There's going to be a lot of people angry. With Russia, they've done everything they can to Russia, but Brighton Beach is still open. Brighton Beach is still open. There's still a lot of Americans going to Russia back and forth. Russians coming here. They've done about everything they can do to Russia, and they haven't been able to do that to Russia. So, I have a hard time believing, John, that they would go ahead and do that with Iran. But they might, right? The fighting in the ruling class might be intense enough that they would do that. So there you go. And then the Chow Chow Cafe said, great job, Caleb. People need to know about the big money ties to Zionists. It's throughout our system, not just our politicians are bought and paid for. Yeah. And that's important. When we talk about imperialism, it's not like corruption, right? It's not like somebody got bribed. It's not like somebody got bribed. It's rather that, that this is the system of imperialism. Israel was set up by the British Empire to serve their interests in the Middle East. And in addition to that, the United States then went ahead and pushed the creation of Israel at the United Nations, and that Israel, they've called it an unsinkable battleship. Joe Biden, many times on the floor of Congress, he would say, if Israel didn't exist, it would be necessary to create it. Right. It serves a purpose for them. It's not just a matter of corruption. And I think that's one of the flaws. A lot of times liberals, they make it like corruption, right? There was a lot of stuff about Halliburton, during the Bush administration. Well, is it true that Halliburton was an oil company that Bush and Dick Cheney were tied to? Yeah. Did they make a lot of money off the war in Iraq? Yeah. Is that the only reason the USA hated Saddam Hussein? No. The whole U.S. imperialist apparatus wanted to destroy Iraq. Iraq under Saddam Hussein was an outpost of anti-imperialism. It was funding the Palestinians. It was funding various anti-imperialist resistance groups around the world. And Iraq was selling oil on the international markets in competition with Wall Street. So did Halliburton directly benefit from the Iraq war? Sure. Is Biden and Burisma Holdings, are they directly benefiting from the conflict in Ukraine? Sure. But it's not just, these examples of nepotism and corruption. They're not the whole story. We're against a whole system of imperialism. And that's important. That's important. Okay. All right. Oh, and then John says the Columbia students should use your new textbook at their new university. I agree. I agree. Somebody should arrange that. Maybe we can go deliver it to them when they unlock the campus or whatever. Right now, I wouldn't be able to get in and give it to them, but maybe we can arrange that. So there we go. All right. So now I'm going to start answering people's super chats. And if anyone else has any more super chats, we do appreciate it. Super chats are a way to help, help this channel, help me keep this room, help me pay my rent, which is too damn high here in New York City. Super chats are a way to support the work that I'm doing, support, my writing, my journalism, etc. It's not the only way. You can buy the books that we publish and all of that. And Center for Political Innovation funds are separate. Right. And let's keep that in mind. Right. If you want to help the Center for Political Innovation, right, we've got our retreat coming up this weekend. I'm not going to show the video, but we, got a retreat coming up this weekend in Vermont. There's a good number of people that are going to be up there for the whole weekend for classes about anti-imperialism. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, it's going to be awesome. And, hey, if you would like to help us do it, right? If you want to donate to help the classes that CPI is doing this weekend and, help us cover the loose ends and make sure we can cover everything and do it more comfortably, you can always send us a donation. And it's just through the CPI Stripe account. You can donate to CPI. That's just one way to do it. Right? You can just donate to CPI. That's just a great way to support, the classes that we're doing, the other things we're doing. I don't have access to these funds. They're handled by other people. So there's that. And also, if you do want to just support me, because I'm going to have to go to Vermont and I'm going to have to get my hotel in Vermont. And, I would like to stay in the Airbnb with everybody, but I need to, if I'm going to be giving classes all weekend, I need a place I can be quiet and practice and stuff. So if you want to support me and support my involvement, you can also just Cash App me, right? That's one way, you can support me. I'm just Caleb Moppin 22 on Cash App, so if you want to support, support the work that I do, and, support my work this weekend in particular, so the funds go directly to me. If you want to make a small contribution to help me cover my hotel in Vermont, etc., just Cash App me. Caleb Moppin 22. Very easy to remember. So Cash App contributions will help me get through the weekend. That would be appreciated if you want to do that. It always helps with everything. We're going to have a decent number of people in Vermont, 25 to 30. There's a couple people that are still on the fence, but it looks like definitely about 25 people. And we're going to have 4 days of classes, and shout out to Tyler, who's going to be helping out, and other people are helping out. It's not just going to be me the whole time. Thank goodness. Right. But on top of that, Tyler is going to help us do the video, and it's going to be a great few days. Right. I have been needing a vacation for quite some time. I went to Russia and I really enjoyed it, but it was stressful. It was a lot of work. Meeting the president and running the youth festival, American delegation and all of that. And, but this is going to be time with my comrades up in the mountains, and talking about Marxism and getting to know people. And I must say, this workshop we're going to do, it's going to be a very, very diverse group of people that are coming. Right? There's our members that are coming. There's some new people we haven't met before that are coming. There are some people that I know that are in more of the conspiracy kind of world. There's some people I know that are very religious that are coming. It is going to be very, very, very diverse. Very, very, very diverse this weekend. And, also, I will say a lot of things are going wrong in the lead up to this weekend. I'm not going to get into specifics, but not like anyone's doing anything wrong, but it's just things logistically aren't going the way they should. I think that is a very, very good sign. I think it's a very good sign, because every time you have an event where you're like scrambling at the last minute to get everything in order, somehow that makes the event go really, really well. Right. It's weird how that works. But if you get into a routine where you're just kind of going through the motions, the event loses its passion. But this event, in terms of getting the van from New York City and getting the place here and people who are coming and then not coming, I mean, there's been a lot of last minute shenanigans. And I think that's a really good sign. We are going to have a really awesome, passionate event. So I'm very excited about that. I'm disappointed with some things, but I think we're going to have a very effective event. But we do need your support. And someone just sent me a Cash App contribution. Very much appreciated. But yeah, if you want to just help me get through the weekend, you can Cash App me, Caleb Maupin 22, and that'll help me get through the weekend. And if you want to just support CPI, go to the CPI website. There's a donate button. And, also just, you can just send super chats, right? Because that's the YouTube channel. So there we go. But anyhow, that's a digression. I don't want this to get to be like PBS, right? We're here to talk about politics, but sometimes, you gotta do what you can do, right? But there you go. So now I'm going to start answering the super chats that have come through on the second half of the show here. Gala, our good friend out in Texas, says she loved my coverage for RT. Great job. Well, thank you, Gala. I love the work that I do, and I'm really glad you appreciated it. And you're a great friend of our community. All the best to you. I think I saw that it was your wedding anniversary on Facebook. So best to you and your husband and your family. Thank you. I hope that the student protests lead to an actual anti-imperialist movement, not just a march that came and went. Well, that, Battle Cossack, is why I wrote the book, right? And why we put out this textbook. That's why CPI exists. Out of the movement to the masses, right? The PSL, Party of Socialism and Liberation, they are determined to keep the Palestine protests woke. They don't want average Americans to just realize that, wow, our government is giving money to Israel while America's falling apart. They don't want Americans to realize that. They work very hard to make these protests as inaccessible to average Americans as possible. All the people on the bullhorns are always talking about white settler colonial mansplaining patriarchy, and they have the shrill, and I honestly, I'll just be honest with you all. I hate to say this, right? But it's like, I was there for 4 hours today. I got sunburned and all this. And I mean, I spent my whole 20s, and I'm, it's Palestine will live for, and it's such a toxic environment. I just got to tell you. It's just something about the atmosphere at these rallies. It just brings out the worst in people, right? People are, and it's obviously you got the pro-Israel people shouting at you. You're shouting back at them. Obviously, people are upset and hurt and angry about what's happening in Gaza, but it's just something about that woke protest atmosphere brings out the worst in people. There's no love in these protest cages. There's no solidarity. There's no desire for people to feel included. It's got a very negative, angry vibe to it, right? And that it doesn't have to be that way, right? And it does because it's woke, because it's attached to that libidinal desire for rebellion. It's appealing to people's anger and rage. It's appealing to people's desire to tear down and take revenge. And it just gives off a negative vibe. And I think that's why the bulk of the population looks at the movement and they walk away, because they sense like this is someone who's really angry. This is someone who's really, really angry having an episode. And they have the right to. I mean, what's happening in Gaza now is unconscionable, right? And so people have the right to be angry. And I'm not trying to tell people they shouldn't be angry, but there is this kind of like to people who aren't overtly political, it does just give off this vibe of these are a bunch of really, really angry people that look kind of unhealthy. And, that's why CPI, we always have American flags, we wear suits and ties, and we try to keep it positive, and we try to focus on what we're for, not what we're against. And we don't exude violence and anarchy. It's like we're always talking about, we come up with policy solutions. Why can't they put oil under natural ownership? Why can't we have a mass mobilization to rebuild the country? We have 4 things that we're in favor of, not that we're against, that we're for: building and constructing. We talk about technology and optimism. We're trying to give off and exude a different vibe, because there's just like a spiritual problem with the left. Okay. And, that's not going to make me popular. And I know a lot of people in the protest cages don't like me already. And here I am spouting my voice off on the internet. They're going to like me even more, but it's true. right? There's a deeply spiritual problem with all things that are left, right? The concept of the left is not a good one, right? It goes back to the French Revolution. And, it was necessary. Feudalism is a very authoritarian way of doing things where people have no freedom, and that obviously appealing to people's desire to rebel against that, made sense. Okay. So it's like things can turn into their opposite. But now, everything that is left, that left aesthetic, not the idea, socialism is a good thing. Anti-imperialism is a good thing. What leftism is the concepts are good, opposing racism, opposing sexism, but the spiritual vibe of leftism is very toxic. And that's what that essay I wrote, the anti-woke mindset that I read you all, I made like a short video of. That's what I'm getting at. There's a spiritual problem. There is a deep spiritual problem. I'm going to start crying now because I saw it today. There's just a very deep spiritual problem in leftist circles, okay? Leftism as a movement, it has this very, very, very deep spiritual psychological problem, right? There's just a lot of trauma, rage, hate, feeling like you're a victim, being full of anger, pessimism. And there's a real problem. There's a deep spiritual problem with all things that are left. And if we don't fix that, it's not going to lead anywhere good. Hey, there we go. If we don't fix that, it's not going to lead anywhere good. CPI, we're called the city building tendency. Chapter 5 of the textbook is called the city building tendency. We're trying to fix that. We're trying to create a left that, a socialism. And Robert knows it's true, right? Robert has seen this his whole life as I have. There is a deep, deep spiritual problem in these circles. And that's what we're trying to fix. That's what we're trying to get beyond. So, all righty. So there, I answered that. Why haven't Cuba and Vietnam joined the BRICS? Well, my understanding is that the BRICS is growing slowly, and that the BRICS doesn't want to just be anti-imperialist and socialist countries, because there's a number of countries in the BRICS, Brazil, India, that are not fully anti-imperialist revolutionary countries. And it's really important that the BRICS be able to recruit those big economies. And so if all the socialist countries just join BRICS, they're going to be like, oh, BRICS is the new Commie-Con. That's not what we want, right? BRICS needs to be in India. BRICS needs to be in Brazil, right? And so, there's a lot of countries that want to join the BRICS. I'm sure Cuba and Vietnam want to join the BRICS, but letting them in right now would not serve BRICS' aim, right? Because if BRICS just becomes the new Commie-Con, then the imperialists cut it off, right? And that's what happened during the Cold War. In the Cold War, you had the Bretton Woods, the Western economy, and you had Commie-Con. And, there was two blocks, two world economies that were completely isolated. Well, right now there are two world economies, but they're interconnected. And that interconnection prevents the West, kind of like what I was just talking about with Iran visas. This gets back to John McCarthy's question. Part of the reason that I'm not sure they're going to do that with Iran, they might, but I'm not sure they're going to, is because of those interconnections. Those interconnections protect us. Those interconnections prevent World War III, right? Those interconnections, are the road to peace, right? So if BRICS just allows all the anti-imperialist socialist countries and doesn't, then at that point, a lot of the countries that are not like that, like Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, a lot of the countries that are not fully anti-imperialist, Turkey or whatever, might say no and might not join, right? And because of that, because they then don't join, then the BRICS countries just get isolated, and it defeats the whole purpose, right? We want to build an entirely new economy in the world. We don't just want to have the anti-imperialist states trade with each other, right? And that's really important. So it's about understanding that. The other thing that's really important, and this is some heavy stuff here. I don't think that socialism in our time is necessarily just within the borders of one country, right? I think that China's socialist economy has a lot of influence in capitalist African countries. There are a lot of capitalist countries in Africa that because their primary investor is state-controlled corporations in China, their economy, it may have a lot of free markets and it may be run according to profits, but it's so reliant on the socialism of China that you can't really call it a separate thing, right? And that this is some important things, like the fact that so many West African countries are kicking American troops out, right? Niger, Burkina Faso, and this is great, right? And I mean, the imperialists lost West Africa. Like I don't think people really understand the gravity of that. We don't follow African news here in the United States. Very little news about Africa is reported. But the fact that Niger, Burkina Faso, Gabon, all these countries had anti-imperialist, anti-colonial military uprisings. That's huge, right? And now they're kicking the UN out and they're kicking the United States out. They're building infrastructure and development. There's a whole corner of the world that the imperialists have been exploiting and colonizing for a century. They just lost control of it, right? And that Russia is going to bring stability and China is going to bring stability. And the imperialists have been dividing those areas. They've been, Nigeria has had how many years of civil war, and, the Biafra separatist thing and the Niger Delta separatists and the Muslims fighting Christians and persecuting Zakzaki and the Islamic movement of Nigeria, the Shia Muslims of Nigeria. There's so much that's been going on, right? And now a whole chunk of the African continent, the military there, these kind of military nationalist leaders have said, you know what? Boom. We're done. We're joining the new economy. That's awesome. That's huge, right? I mean, that's like a huge win for anti-imperialism. And like, it's not like, an RT is now opening a studio in Africa, right? CGTN has huge amounts of African coverage. Like, there's a huge amount changing. That is, if you think about the what that means, the imperialists just lost a huge part of one of the richest continents on the planet. There's a whole lot of oil there, a whole lot of minerals there, a whole lot of people there. A huge chunk of the planet just broke with the imperialists, right? And because it's one of the poorest chunks of the world, and because we don't hear much about it, right? They're kind of trying to downplay the impact. They're mentioning it, but it's like, that's huge. That's really, really huge. I think more than anything, it had to do with the role of the French imperialists. I think that the French imperialists were less anti-Russian, less anti-Chinese until recently. And I think that is what put them over the edge, right? Is that when France went all in against Russia, there were people in all of these countries, in the military and other things, that said, that's enough. We just can't, because these countries were former French colonies, most of them. And they were, independent, but they were still largely trading and dominated by French imperialism, French corporations, etc. And they had military leaders, many of whom were attending international conferences and getting military training from Russia, and in admiration of Russia as a military power, having investment from Russia, doing business with Russia, receiving food aid from Russia, military support from Russia. And they, one country after another, boom, 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 they had anti-colonial revolutions. They said, it's time to just kick the French imperialists out and join the anti-imperialist camp. That's really a big fucking deal. That's a big fucking deal. It's a game changer in global politics, right? And we get demoralized, we get saddened by developments like, it's kind of like Bolivarianism in Latin America. Bolivarianism was a big game changer. Hugo Chavez, when he got going, and then you got Evo Morales in Bolivia, and then you had the Sandinistas back in power, and that was a huge game changer. This is like Bolivarianism. What Bolivarian socialism did for Latin America, this is for the African continent, right? Bolivarianism, now they've been able to roll it back in a number of places, but not in Venezuela, not in Nicaragua. In a lot of places, there's still a lot of strong Bolivarian and socialist and anti-imperialist institutions in South America, places like Brazil, places like Argentina, that haven't been eroded, but largely Bolivarianism has been rolled back. But there's some places it's held on, and there's a lot of infrastructure that's still there. And Bolivarianism was a huge game changer in global politics? Well, I would argue that that what's happening in West Africa now, this is a huge game changer in global politics as well. So that's my thoughts on that. Please, at some point, react to Giannis Varoufakis at the Australian Press Club. Okay, I don't follow Giannis Varoufakis very much. I really don't. But I can check it out. I mean, there's a whole layer of people like Giannis Varoufakis and Vijay Prashad, and these like professional Marxists who are always anti-Russia and always against China and whatever. And Vijay Prashad is not as bad as some of the other ones, but he is, right? And they always, you listen to Vijay Prashad, for example. Vijay Prashad sounds like, he's on Russia's side, sounds like he's on China's side. But you'll notice the only good things he says about the Soviet Union and stuff is that they supported the Black freedom struggle in the United States. You never hear him talking about economic development. You never hear him refuting the idea that socialism failed in the Soviet Union. And when he praises China, he's really good. Vijay Prashad is the art of woke podium pounding, right? Whenever, Vijay Prashad, there's this clip going around of him talking about, is China socialist? And he's like, oh, why do they always ask, is China socialist? Well, that's so simplistic. So much is happening in China. This is such a racist, Eurocentric question, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but you could explain to your audience what socialism is and why China is that. But instead of doing that, you're just calling your audience racist and saying, oh, you got to think stronger. That's and it's like, you're not answering the fucking question. Right? Vijay Prashad promotes degrowth, right? The idea that there's too many people in the world, that we need to reduce consumption. He's all about degrowth and, the idea that socialism means everyone has less, etc. There's a lot of that. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan, right? And there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And look, this Party of Socialism and Liberation, Tricontinental Institute, there's the People's Forum. This is a very negative apparatus, right? They serve a particularly toxic role. Number one, they're trying to keep anti-imperialism in the movement, i.e., keep it woke, keep it exuding that negative, hateful vibe that turns off most people. They're really trying to keep, they want to own anti-imperialism and own socialism and keep it in this toxic place and attached to the Democratic Party and attached to whatever the trendy liberal causes are. And on top of that, they are trying to insert those kinds of politics into China, right? Which is what the synthetic left did during the Cold War. Right? During the Cold War, right, we know that the synthetic left, Angela Davis and all the college professors that were in the Communist Party and people like Bernie Sanders, they were going over to the Soviet Union. They were boosting people like Gorbachev. And they were talking about democratic socialism and de-Stalinization and socialism with a human face. That is what PSL is doing with China. And you know that, right? That if PSL sends people to China, they're meeting with the Chinese and telling them, what about the trans people in China? Don't you have enough trans stuff in China? And I think, and they're going over there and they're trying to push like postmodern synthetic leftism and get, number one, they want the Chinese Communist Party to believe the Democrats are their real friends, which right now is probably not a hard sell because the Republicans are talking against them harder. Number two, they want to find like dissident ultra-left elements in China that are against the party, that are against Xi Jinping, that want real socialism, angry young people in China, appeal to their grievances and get them to say, yeah, well, China sold out, and they want to create unrest. They're trying to do the same kind of shit that the synthetic left did in the Soviet Union in the 80s. They're trying to do that in China. They're not China's real friends. If you were China's real friend, you wouldn't try to get them to be aligned with the Democrats, right? Do you think that China is all about the trans thing? Does China cancel people for not being pro-trans? No, right? But PSL does, right? Do you think China is constantly going around and does the Chinese Communist Party exude the same negative vibe you get in the protest cage in America? No, you don't, right? And that this is an apparatus that's been created, funded by the billionaire Roy Singham, to try and boost, the destabilizing, pessimistic wing in China, to reinforce the idea that China's real friends are the Democrats, and to keep people in America who are sympathetic to Iran or Venezuela or Cuba or China or Russia, or not really Russia because they've denounced Russia, but keep them attached to wokeness, keep them in that toxic protest cage where they're exuding hate, where it's a very sinister operation. There's a reason. Look, CPI, we're not that big. We got 155 members. We publish a few books and all of that. And number one, we have accomplished so much in such a short amount of time. It's like, damn, right? I mean, we've moved mountains practically. I could give you a whole list of everything we've done. It's like, how can a group that is this small with this little funding, this low number of membership, how can we accomplish so much? Number one. And number two, like, they have gone after us with a fucking sledgehammer. Like, holy shit, they have sent informers into our group. They forced us to temporarily dissolve at one point. I mean, holy shit, they have never gone after a group like they've gone after us. Why? I mean, they had the Communist Party had to write a manifesto against us on their website. They never do that. The Communist Party pretends other groups don't exist, right? There's a song David Rovics has about communist groups. He says, and the CP, they just do their thing, and they pretend the others don't exist. Well, they don't pretend we don't exist. They had to write a huge declaration on our website calling us Nazis and all this awful stuff. Why have we accomplished so much? And number two, why have they been so desperate to destroy us? Because we're doing what no one else will do. We're doing out of the movement to the masses. We're the only communist formation in America that doesn't exude pessimism, that doesn't exude woke, angry, destructive politics. People come to CPI and they can feel God's love. Okay? I'm just being real with you, right? They can feel God's love in CPI. They can feel a sense of comradeship and brotherhood. They know that we love our country. We love America. That's why we oppose imperialism. They know that we are trying to build and not tear down. They know we're not motivated by libidinal and Oedipal desires to destroy. They're seeing something in CPI. The reason people join CPI is like the reason that people joined the Chinese Communist Party back in the day. The reason people join CPI is like the reason that people joined Hugo Chavez and Bolivarian socialism, right? When Chavez, what did it for Chavez after he got elected? Right after Hugo Chavez was first elected president of Venezuela, there were mudslides in Venezuela. And a lot of people, the poorer people, they live in the mountains and they're on hills and they were losing everything. So Chavez got on national television and he called on the people of the country to volunteer. And he took the military of the country. It was the first time any president had ever done anything like this. And he sent the military to the communities that were affected by the mudslides to rescue people, to rebuild their homes. And the country was like, whoa, like, who is this guy? Right? And he's on the TV and he's talking about these mudslides and he's interviewing and talking to people that are victims of the mudslides. And he mobilizes thousands of people in the country to go and help their brothers and sisters during the mudslides. And no president in Venezuelan history had ever done that. And he's out there. These mud floods have happened. These people are losing their home. And the military is out there helping people all of a sudden. And the president is on TV and people are going out to help their community, right? They're going out to help their community and they organize Bolivarian circles. It's a spirit of patriotism after Simón Bolivar, the national hero who defeated, Spanish colonialism. And he said, and at that point, Hugo Chavez was wildly popular. They said, this president is not like any others. This guy's a city builder. This guy really loves our country. This guy really wants to help. And then he was able to pass a new constitution, the Bolivarian Constitution. And then the USA tried to overthrow him in a coup. And the military rose up and brought him back to power because they said there's something special about this Hugo Chavez guy. This guy is not like any president we've ever had. He was a city builder, right? Hugo Chavez appealed to what's good, right? And he said, look, I'm going to use the government, the state. I am going to have a government of action that fights for working families, right? That they were used to the government just sitting back. Oh, there's a mudslide. Well, you're shit out of luck. You know what I mean? But no. Hugo Chavez said, we got a government of action. He sends the military to help people. And then he tells people in their communities, you can help too. You can join a Bolivarian circle, and you can have a food drive, and you can host some of the people that got displaced in the flooding. And the whole country's like, what? We've never had a president who does this before. And he whips up a spirit of community empowerment. And then from there, he says, hey, I want us to have a more, socialistic constitution. Yes, we vote yes. The population voted yes. Right? That is why they voted for Hugo Chavez. If Hugo Chavez had come into office saying, I will destroy the imperialists, I will take the rich people who in this country, and I will hang them all and behead them, no one would have ever voted for Hugo Chavez, right? But he appealed to people's desire to build. That's what he appealed to. He appealed to their desire to build, their feelings of love and community, and that made Hugo Chavez unstoppable. Right. And they tried to coup him. They tried to force elections where he would lose, and they could not stop Hugo Chavez. Right. They couldn't stop him. And that is really, 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 really important. Right. That's really, really, really important. And I wish people could understand that, could see that, could see how important that is. I want to put on, some video of Hugo Chavez if I can, because I really wish people could understand that Hugo Chavez is a brilliant example of what a real socialist leader in our time could be. Maybe in the past, right? Socialists could appeal to people's desire for rebellion, but not anymore. Hugo Chavez took power appealing to people's desire to build and construct, and he used state power. He implemented a government of action, and he used state power to make people's lives better. That's what Hugo Chavez did, and that was unstoppable. And that was really, really powerful. I'm trying to find you a clip of Hugo Chavez. I just want to show you Hugo Chavez, what he was like, right? I'd like to show you that. It's like I type his name in, and the only thing that comes up is him calling Bush the devil at the United Nations. It's like, yeah, that's not what I'm looking for, right? Chavez used to have his TV show Allo Presidente, where he just spoke. He just spoke for hours, with the Venezuelan people, taking their calls and engaging them. Seriously, I am Googling Hugo Chavez. Every single video that comes up is him calling Bush the devil. It's like, that is not the only speech he ever gave, right? My God. Wow. Yeah. I'm trying to find Hugo Chavez English. Just trying to find a speech by Hugo Chavez that I can show you all. This is frustrating. Why is YouTube so bad, right? Why is it rigged? Now here is the king telling him to shut up. I don't want to show that. I want to show a real Hugo Chavez speech, right? But there we go. Hey, this is frustrating. This is frustrating. I want to just show you what the man was like, and I am having difficulty. Well, here's Hugo Chavez's decision to expel the Israeli ambassador. Let's see. Not in English. This is frustrating. All right, that's going to be one thing I do for you all. I am going to go find a Hugo Chavez speech that I can show you. I think I have one that I posted on my YouTube channel like years ago, like when he was still alive. Let me see if I got that, right? Maybe I can show you that one, right? Maybe I can do that. Yeah, actually, I have a speech that Hugo Chavez gave in Moscow in 2009. So maybe I can, I'll show you that. All right. Right. I'll show you Hugo Chavez speaking in Moscow in 2009. And I got more super chats to answer, and we'll get to them. Don't worry. Don't worry. The night is young, as they say. But here we go. This is Hugo Chavez speaking in Moscow.
Government wants to dominate the whole world. When the USSR collapsed, the Yankee Empire said that it's an historical ending. But history never ends. And the Yankee Empire, that might have dominated the world, can no longer do it. It's already falling. And it's going to happen in the coming years, within several decades. And if the Yankee Empire doesn't fall, the human race will come to an end. So, let's make a choice between the Yankee Empire and the human race. And if we do not finish with supremacy, political, economic, and military that the American empire is trying to impose, we could become barbaric. That's why it's so important for Russia to step up. Russia must stand firm on the ground, and I believe that it's going to be one of the great legacies President Dmitry Medvedev and Prime Minister Vladimir Putin will leave not only to Russia, but the whole world.
He's like predicting the future here. Like, this video is from 2009. Okay, this is like over 13 years ago, and he's saying that the legacy of Putin will be standing up to U.S. imperialism. This is amazing.
Imagine the integration, and we've been fighting for it already. And to define it better, we made it a principle of our foreign policy that we completely share with Russia to create a multipolar world. This vision, of course, has been developing itself. And this 8-day trip allowed me and my fellow workers to see it in a more clear way. The integration of the 21st century is no longer the creation of great blocs, like the Soviet Union. We start seeing everywhere, in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe, growing unity of small groups. We already have a multi-nucleus world. We don't just have one block of political power in Latin America. You can't see it happening in the long run either.
This is, again, how he's talking about multipolarity. I mean, this is like he's decades ahead. This is amazing.
And we cannot imagine only one block in Africa, for example, nor in Asia, nor Europe. That's the way I see it, and I say it in a humble way. That's my personal vision, nothing else. We already have a multi-nucleus world existing today. A number of nuclei of different countries united together. And I'm not talking about nuclear powers, nuclear atomic bombs. We're against atomic bombs. We want peace in the whole world. Can you imagine atomic war? It would be the end of the world, or at least a great part of it. But a multi-nucleus world, because there's some countries that are the nucleus around which we have development, the product of integration between some of them, some poles of power, of influence in the 21st century. We can see that in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America as well. We can see it clearly. A new political map with multiple powers that are growing. In Europe, it's not so clear. I'm sorry. Not yet for now.
Anyway, that's Hugo Chavez. Anyway, I wanted to show you all that. But anyhow, thank you, Crooklyn in Brooklyn. I do appreciate it. Hey, Caleb, recently found your channel and so glad I did. Question, what are your thoughts on the social credit system in China? More Red Scare rhetoric for the West or something to keep an eye on? Well, if you read the Washington Post and if you read, it's not what they say it is. One of the main problems they have in China is if you get convicted of a crime, of a very serious crime, and you have to pay a big fine, they have no way of making you collect well, this is one thing they can do, is they can, make it so you can't book a flight or book a train ticket until you pay your fine. It's one way to force people to actually pay the fines when they get convicted. But this idea that it's like the government sees you buy alcohol and says, that's naughty, and doxes your credit score. That's not what happens, right? They tried it out in different ways in different localities. And ultimately, the government has to determine who it is in its interest to do business with, just like a private corporation would. A private corporation, if they're going to do business with somebody, they're going to rate them. They're going to say, all right, well, this company offers this company offers that. Well, this is a way that the Chinese Communist Party can determine how to strategically use its resources in order to benefit its socialist economy, just like a private corporation would. Right. And it assesses people, and it assesses people, and based on that determines whether or not it wants to trade with them. It's basically a credit score, except instead of it being set by private corporations based on how you pay back your loans, it's set by the government based on how loyal to the country you seem to be. And based on that, they determine how much the Chinese government should invest in you. Because in China, they have a very big layer of people that are very, very wealthy that are not helping the country. And, it's been hurting them that the Chinese government has been giving all its business contracts to wealthy people who don't agree with them, wealthy people who are trying to undermine socialism and such. So they try to determine who agrees with us before we give them a government contract. And it's nothing like what you're reading. And for the overwhelming majority of the people are in no way affected by it. It's a very, very, very small minority of people that are really in any way affected by it. It's not what you're reading. So there we go. We need pro-Palestine and anti-imperialist music festivals. I think that would be great. Yeah, I think that would be excellent. I am all for music. That's one thing David Rovics would critique the anti-war protests about. Why no music at the protests, right? They create such a better atmosphere when you have music. You can't have an event without music. At our upcoming retreat, CPI, we're going to have Quebec hammer dulcimer players perform, right? Upbeat, happy songs, because music adds something very special. Tyler is going to play some music. We're looking forward to that as well. Music always adds something very, very special to gatherings, anti-imperialist music. I mean, probably one of the things that got me interested the most in communism was folk music. I mean, I grew up on folk music, Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger and all of that. And, that my mother, father, they would take me to the concerts. I would sit there and we'd listen to the guy up there singing, Michael, row the boat ashore, and I mean, that was just part of how I grew up. And, a lot of that music is very socialist. It's also very religious, tends to be pretty religious, tends to be very just kind of old fashioned, but I like folk music, right? And I don't just like communist folk music. I like folk music in general, right? Songs like The Water is Wide, right? That's not a religious song. It's not a communist song. It's just a sweet old love song. The water is wide. I cannot cross o'er, and neither have I wings to fly. Give me a boat. Anyway, it's just an old love song, right? I like folk music. I really, really do. I really like folk music. And folk music, a lot of it has a very, very socialist edge. I'll tell you a story I think is hilarious, right? So I remember when I was a kid, my parents, because they liked folk music, they took me to a folk music concert. Me, my brother, my mom and dad. And it was just some local guy. No, not a famous guy. Famous people, you got to pay a lot of money for. This was just some local folk singer. So he's up there and he was a kind of a fat guy. I don't know who he was, to tell you the truth. He was just this fat guy, and he's up there playing a song. And so he played Joe Hill's anti-Christian, anti-religious song, Pie in the Sky. And I obviously had no clue what that song was about because I was 5 or 6 years old, or maybe I was 9 or 10. I had no clue what he's talking about. Right. And I just remember it was, I remember hearing it, and I'm trying to make process. What is this about? Right. It's, long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked about something to eat, they'll answer in voices so sweet. You will eat by and by. It's classic Joe Hill. It's they're mocking the Salvation Army, and they're saying class struggle is the answer, not just being religious, not hoping for what's good in the next life. They're saying rather fight, for what you got in this life, right? It's a class struggle song. It's counterposing class struggle to just, pie in the sky, right? It's one of the old wobbly songs that is anti-religious. I wouldn't say it's anti-religious. It's anti the religious establishment. It's mocking the defenders of the status quo who discourage class struggle in the name of being religious, right? There's a verse like that, some people leave out. It's like, if you work hard throughout your whole life, fight the bosses, both husband and wife. You're a sinner, a bad man, they tell. When you die, you will sure go to hell. So anyway, I'm sitting there, I'm listening to the song, and he's talking about the Salvation Army, and I'm listening to it, and I am like, what is he getting at, right? I'm sitting there, and then the last verse of the song is, working folks of all countries unite. Side by side, we for freedom will fight. And when this world and its wealth we have gained, to the bosses we'll sing this refrain. And the last verse is, you will eat by and by. When you've learned how to cook and how to fry, chop some wood, do you good. It's basically saying after the revolution, we're going to make the bosses work. Well, so I'm hearing the song and I'm hearing about it's all, it's talking about, and I thought that the message of the song, this is how little I knew then compared to what I know now. I heard the song and I thought the song was saying that rather than praying for financial success, one should go and work really hard and start your own business. That's what I interpreted pie in the sky as meaning, which honestly, if you don't know anything about socialism, right? If you don't know anything about the context, right? It actually kind of makes sense that that's how you would interpret the song. And I look back at myself as a kid, and I'm sitting there with my parents, and there's a big fat guy up there singing, Sweet By and By, Pie in the Sky by Joe Hill. I'm hearing it and I'm like, oh, okay. So you should work really hard and not just pray for financial success. That's how I interpreted the song. That is not what that song is about at all, right? That song is basically saying, go out and organize unions and fight the rich and powerful, and these religious these preachers that are saying, oh, just be submissive and then you'll go to heaven. They're phonies and frauds. That's what the song is really about. But I didn't get that, right? And that I think about that because there's a lot of times when I engage with people and I realize that if they don't understand the context, right, they could just as easily and that's when I talk about the synthetic left, when I talk about how the protests have a negative vibe. Like, you have to think about that, right? I always, when I wrote this book, even, you write as if your audience knows nothing, right? Because, and you have to assume, right? You can't just get up in front of the audience and play Sweet By and By and play Pie in the Sky by Joe Hill, because there's probably going to be somebody in the audience who thinks, what? Chop some wood, do you good, right? I mean, they're not going to get it, right? And there's a lot of that. That I feel like, right? And oddly, I would say I shouldn't have said it was an anti-religious song. I mean, Joe Hill was probably an atheist, I assume. I don't know. But, I feel like there's a lot of Christians who would agree with that song. There's probably a lot of Christians that would be like, no, God doesn't want you to just sit back and accept things that are unjust. God wants you to stand up from what's right, challenge the ruling elite, challenge, that it's the whole thing about faith and works. And, I feel like, that there probably are a lot of Christians that would agree with the message of the song, and that a lot of the, televangelists and, are phonies, right? And that a lot of the religious establishment is complicit with injustice. Now I have to play the song. You see what you did? I don't know how we got on this. Now in order to give you all the context, I have to play the song. I've talked about it for an hour. I should have done that after. I should have played it first, but I'm going to play Joe Hill's Pie in the Sky. I have to find a version of it I can get away with. But this is a classic socialist folk song, which is kind of anti-religious, but like I said, I don't think it's anti-religious. It's against the religious establishment. That's how I would put it. It's against the religious establishment. Here's a guy playing it. I hope that he does a good job with it. It's always a risk, especially with these old folk songs. You get guys that want to do their whole version of it. But Okay, here we'll put it on. We'll put on. It's, I guess, the real title of it. I always call it. Everyone calls it "Pie in the Sky" because that's where the phrase. If you ever heard anyone say "pie in the sky," it actually originates to this song, which I did not know, but it actually does. If you hear someone say, "Well, that's a pie in the sky dream," it actually comes from this Joe Hill song. He took the gospel hymn "Sweet By and By," and he replaced it with "Pie in the Sky When You Die," and he wrote this song. I guess it's technically called "The Preacher and the Slave." And so I'm just going to put it on so you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a very classic, it's a very classic class struggle, socialist, and critical of the religious establishment song. And when I first heard it when I was a kid, I had no clue what it was about. I thought it was, it was saying one should work really hard, and in order to achieve financial success. There we go. Here we go. Hold on. All right.
Pie of the street night. Long-haired preachers come out every night to try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie. And the Starvation Army, they play. They sing and they clap and they pray till they get all your coin on the drum. And they'll tell you when you're on the bum, you're gonna eat by and by, poor boy. That glorious land above the sky, where pie, work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die, dirty lie. Holy rollers and jumpers come out. They holler, they jump, Lord, they shout. Give your money to Jesus, they say. He will cure all troubles today. And you'll eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Where pie, work and pray, boy, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. If you fight hard for children and wife, try to get something good in this life. You're a sinner, a bad man, they tell. When you die, you'll sure go to hell. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky, above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. Working men of all countries unite. Side by side we for freedom will fight. When this world and this wealth we have gained, to the grafters we'll sing this refrain. You will eat by and by when you've learned how to cook and to fry. Chop some wood, it'll do you good. You will eat in the sweet by and by. Yes, you'll eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie.
All right. Well, and I'll do we play Mansour Jack, right? He does good lefty songs. He's a guy, a piano vocalist. Mansour Jack. We'll put his version of it on.
Long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right. But when asked about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, Salvation Army they play, and they sing and they clap and they pray till they get all your coin on the ground. Then they'll tell you that you're on the bum. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die, that's a lie. If you fight hard for children and wife, try to get something good in this life, you're a sinner and a bad man, they tell. When you die, you will sure go to hell. You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay. You'll get pie in the sky when you die, that's a lie. Working folks of all countries unite. Side by side we for freedom shall fight. When the world and its wealth we have gained, to the grafters will sing this refrain. You will eat by and by when you've learned how to cook and how to fry. Chop some wood will do you good, and you'll eat in that sweet by and by. That's no lie.
Alrighty. Okay. Now John McCarthy in Rumble, he said, "Water is Wide" is political. They're separated because one of them was exiled by the British. I didn't know that, right? So it's a Fenian song, right? It's an Irish national liberation song. Well, there you go. See, there's a political context. There's a lot of songs about that, right? There's what is it? There's 10,000 Miles Away, right? Which is a song, right? There's a lot of Irish songs that are about that. I didn't realize that, right? Wow. There's what is it? There's The Fields of Athen Rye, right? Right. That's about exile or deportation. There's a song called 10,000 Miles Away, which is about about being, it's Australian, I believe, but it's about being exiled to Australia. Right? 10,000 Miles Away. Yeah, there's a number of songs that are about that. So it doesn't surprise me that there would be another one, but yeah, I never knew that that was the context of that song. So there you go. But yeah, that was an awful thing the British would do: separate families, forcible deportation, deport people for crimes. That was an awful aspect of the British war on the Irish people. So it makes sense that they would there would be a song about that. So there you go. You learn something new every day. I did not know that was what that song was about, but now I know. I might try to play 10,000 Miles Away before I leave. I think I probably will. But before I do that, I do want to answer the last super chat question. If anyone else has any more super chat questions, feel free to send them my way. But Laura Powers said, "Please help. There are videos my dear friends claim show babies in ovens, proud Hamas soldiers talking about sexual assault on women on October 7th. Well, I mean, Gray Zone has done a very good job of debunking a lot of that stuff. There's been a lot of stuff that has been thoroughly debunked. I mean, it comes out that a lot of the people that died on October 7th were actually killed by the Israeli military even. So, I mean, it's like, there's a lot that we're learning, that those kind of narratives, the beheaded babies thing was debunked, and it was like traced back to a single interview where one person said it. I mean, it was just, there's so much of that. The problem is, right, if you play catch up with this stuff too much, right, every time you can debunk a lie and there's 10 more right behind it, right? You have to get people to just understand that truth is on one side. And that could be very hard for people, right? But, after a while, I mean, you can debunk this lie, you can debunk that lie. You have to get them to understand the big picture, right? And get them to understand, well, look, right, hypothetically speaking, right, if some Palestinian did in fact sexually assault an Israeli woman, that would obviously be wrong, right? That'd be horrendous. We don't endorse sexual assault of any kind, right? Especially in a military context. We think it's an awful thing. But would that change the Israel-Palestine situation? And who's right and who's wrong? No, right? That would be an example of one Palestinian soldier doing something that's deeply wrong. And, and we don't endorse that kind of activity. But look, I mean, it's not a secret that during World War II, for example, I mean, there were mass rapes by the Allies. That's a fact, right? That when Germany was, when the Allies went into Germany, the British, the Americans, the French, Soviet Union, there were rapes of German women. There was a lot of that went on. That's deeply wrong and horrible. Does that mean the Nazis were right in World War II? No. You know what I mean? Like, we can recognize that in wars, sometimes the side that is correct will do horrendous things, right? And that doesn't change the nature of the war, right? I mean, I think everyone would agree that Sherman's march to the sea in Georgia, what the Union Army did, in Georgia, I mean, there were crimes against humanity that were committed, right? Sherman's march to the sea was, I mean, those are war crimes, right? Does that mean that the South was right and that slavery was right? No. It just means that, in the process of being on the right side, people do bad things. One thing that people point out is that often the person who wins the war gets to write the history. So because they won the war, their atrocities get downplayed and the atrocities of the guy who lost get exaggerated or played up. And that's just a reality of the situation. But like Japanese internment, for example. Japanese internment, horrendous, awful, not morally justified. All kinds of Japanese Americans who had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor, nothing to do with the Japanese government, got rounded up and put in camps, had their property seized. It was very wrong. Does that mean the Nazis were right in World War II? Obviously not. You know what I mean? And you can think of many examples like this, right? That war is an ugly business and people in wars do evil things. And that just because one side, just because one side happens to be right does not mean it is immune from doing bad things, right? So if someone was able to prove, and I heard there's Gray Zone has done great journalism debunking different things, but if, for example, it was provable that a Palestinian did indeed sexually assault an Israeli woman, that would be a horrendous evil thing. But that wouldn't change the reality of the dynamics of the conflict. And the reason, this is all tricky because it's like, if someone really wanted to screw me, which there are people out there who do, I think a lot of them don't watch anymore, but they could take what I just said out of context, or probably, what they would do is they would just link this stream and put a time code of me just saying everything I just said. Caleb justifies mass rapes by Soviet troops. No, I didn't. I said it was absolutely wrong, but it doesn't make the Nazis right. But that's what they love to do, right? And that they play this game where it's like, in the real world, there's a lot of bad all around. There's a lot of good all around too, right? Is it possible? Well, that leads us down a rabbit hole where I'm going to say even worse things. Are there people who are decent human beings and have good intentions who work for the wrong side? Yes. And that happens in every war also. I'm not going to expound on that further because there's many cancelable statements that follow that up, but you know what I'm saying. There are often people that are very good people that are acting in accordance with their conscience, believe that they are doing right, that are actually on the wrong side, right? And you can think of many examples of that, right? And that's one of the tragic things about war. The American Civil War, right? What side you were on, largely, if you were white, largely depended where you lived, what kind of family you were from. And there were exceptions, like the Free State of Jones, right? Beautiful movie. If you ever get a chance to see Free State of Jones, amazing, right? It's about poor white people who realized that their real enemy was the slaveholders, and they rose up and they teamed up with the black people and they overthrew the Confederacy and they established a liberated territory in Jones County, Mississippi. Very cool. But for most people in the Confederate regions, that was not the way that they thought, and I'm sure many of them really believed they were doing the right thing, but they were wrong. And they were on the wrong side. They were on the side of the genocidal racist Confederacy. They were wrong. And if you met them, you might be like, well, these are nice people. They couldn't be evil racist Confederates defending genocidal slavery. Yeah, they are, during the Vietnam War, there were many Americans. I mean, it was the overwhelming majority of the American people supported that genocidal war against the Vietnamese people. Now that changed by about 1970. The tide had turned, but at the beginning, almost everybody supported the Vietnam War. And now we know that the Vietnam War was a mass murdering genocidal war. Were all those people that supported the Vietnam War at first bad people? No, they just, they based on their unique historical circumstances, they were in a circumstance where they probably believed that the communists were the main threat, that the American government was telling them the truth. I mean, they, in their souls, believed they were doing the right thing and they were on the wrong side. And there's many examples of that, right? And that, again, this is the kind of thing that people who spend their time arguing on the internet can't wrap their minds around, right? Cancel culture doesn't make room for any of this. Let me emphasize that again. Cancel culture does not make room for any of this, and I'm glad you came across this channel by chance. This is what I'm here to talk about. Cancel culture doesn't make room for, I mean, look, in the Chinese Civil War between Mao and Chiang Kai-shek, do you think most people were sitting there and they got a copy of Mao Zedong's writings? They got a copy of the manifesto of the KMT, and they studied, they came to the conclusion that Mao's new democratic revolution was superior to the Chinese nationalist revolution of Chiang Kai-shek. And so no, they didn't do that. You were in a certain area, in a certain region, you supported Chiang Kai-shek. You're in a certain area, in a certain region, you supported Mao. And a lot of areas shifted. At the beginning, most of the areas supported Chiang Kai-shek, and then later, most of the areas supported Mao, and there were a lot of people who flipped. But largely, for most people, it was about the neighborhood you live in, your family. I mean, even now, right? Red states versus blue states. Most people that are Democrats because they live in a neighborhood where other people are Democrats. They come from a family where other people are Democrats. They work with people who are Democrats. They go to church or school or whatever with people that are Democrats. And so they're Democrats. That's why we have blue states. And most people that are Republicans tend to be Republicans because they live in a town where people are Republicans. They work with people who are Republicans. They have Republican family. And that's why we have red states and blue states, right? People have this, those of us who are like ultra political, we forget this. We have it in our minds that every person is like us. They're political junkies. They've got a bookshelf like this and they're examining these things. Most people don't. Most people's thinking about politics is very, very shallow. They're thinking about politics is the people that they're in touch with, the people that they know, they all tend to think a certain way because it's that region and that's the way they think, right? And if you lose that perspective, right, if you can start to understand that, then you can start to think, okay, how can we really change the world, right? But if you don't acknowledge that, you're just going to get angry over and over again, and you're going to shout at the wall, and you're just going to be angry, right? And, the people that were there supporting Israel today, do I think that those people are just bad people deep in their souls? No, I think they understand the world very differently than I do, right? And I wish people could understand that, right? I mean, that's my thought. But anyway, since John McCarthy told us about the real meaning of The Water is Wide, now I have to play another song, which is about the British Empire deporting people, which is called 10,000 Miles Away. It's much faster than The Water is Wide, but it's referring to the same tragic situation, which is deportation. This is called 10,000 Miles Away. It's a song about people being deported to Australia.
Oh, for brave and gallant ship in a fast and favoring breeze, with a belay crew and a captain to carry me all the seas. To carry me all the seas, me boys, to me true love far away, from taking a trip on a government ship 10,000 miles away. Then blow your winds high-ho, and a roving I will go. I'll stay no more on England shore to hear the music play. I'm off on the bounding main, and I won't be back back again. I'm on the move to me own true love 10,000 miles away. My true love, she was beautiful. My true love, she was young. But she's taking a trip on a government ship bound out to Botany Bay. Bound out to Botany Bay, boys, and though she's far away, I'll never forget me own true love 10,000 miles away. Then blow your winds high-ho, and rolling I will go. I'll stay no more on England shore to hear the music play. I'm off on the mountain main, and I won't be back again. But I'm on the move to me own true love 10,000 miles away. It was a summer morning when I last had seen me Meg. She'd a government band around each hand and another one around her leg. And another one around her leg, me boys, as the big ship left the bay. I do say she remember me 10,000 miles away. Then blow your winds high-ho, and roving I will go. I'll stay no more on England shore to hear the music play. I'm off on the bounding main, and I won't be back again. I'm on the move to me own true love 10,000 miles away. I wish I was a bosun, boater, sailor without fear. I'd man aboard and away I'd float and straight to me true love's dear. And straight to me true love's dear, me boys, where the whales and dolphins play. Where the whales and sharks are having their larks 10,000 miles away. Then blow your winds high-ho, and rolling I will go. I'll stay no more on England shore to hear the music play. I'm off on the bounding main, and I won't be back again. I'm on the move to me own true love 10,000 miles away. Where the sun may shine through the London fog of the river run quite clear, or the ocean brine turn into wine, or I forget me beer. Or I'll forget me beer, me boys, and the landlord's gonna pay. But I'll never forget me own true love 10,000 miles away. Then blow your winds high-ho, and roving I will go. I'll stay no more on England shore to hear the music play. I'm off on the mountain main, and I won't be back again. I'm on the move to me own true love 10,000 miles away. Then blow your winds high-ho, and roving I will go. I'll stay no more on England shore to hear the music play. I'm off on the bounding main, and I won't be back again. I'm on the move to me own true love 10,000 miles away.
Alrighty. So there you go. That's more of an upbeat song, but referring to the same tragic situation. But anyhow, folks, it is late. It's almost midnight here, and I did have a long day covering the protests. So I guess I will call it a night. But thank you, everybody. I'm going to put on the closing music, and then from there, we will conclude. We're going to be back probably tomorrow night, if not sooner. I'll be taking the weekend off because we're having our retreat, but I'll be streaming until then, and I'll probably stream on Monday when I get back. So yeah, but I'll be back tomorrow. So, all right. Talk to you soon. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.